Chapter 1256. The group continued onward. Longchen held the jade hook in his hand and injected his chaotic energy into it at a speed visible to the naked eye. The method of injecting his chaotic energy was extremely unique. When it appeared again, it released an unprecedented spatial aura. This scene stunned everyone, and they finally understood why Longchen wanted to obtain this jade hook. This jade hook allowed them to unleash the heavenly space god's innate spell technique. Longchen looked at the jade hook in his hand and said, "It's not impossible to save people in the star prison, but I have to try it myself. When the time comes, just listen to my orders and find an opportunity to assist me. You can also use this time to integrate into the chaotic star prison." Even though everyone had their doubts, they trusted Longchen very much. They knew that Longchen was the successor of the Realm Lord, so his understanding of the chaotic star prison should be far greater than theirs. Moreover, Longchen was already a fourth-order God Emperor, and above the God Emperor were the titled Emperors. Once Longchen became a titled Emperor, he would have a chance to compete for the Realm Lord's position. This was another reason why they had followed Longchen all this time. Whenever Longchen encountered a spatial tunnel, he would use the power of the jade hook to forcefully change the route. Everyone traveled at an extremely fast speed, and they didn't even know where they were in the past few days. Although they had been in a hurry, they had still encountered many other chaotic divine tribes. They had more or less obtained some information from them. The most shocking piece of news was that after the 8 Chaos Divine Tribes returned, they formed an alliance known as the 8-Nation Alliance. With the Heavenly Light God's bloodline as the leader, they chased the Blazing Soul Divine Tribe out of their ancestral land and took back their ancestral land. The ancestral land of the 2 Chaos Divine Tribes became the foothold of the 8-Nation Alliance. In a short period of time, the 8-Nation Alliance had caused quite a stir in the chaotic star prison. On the other side, after the Heavenly Space God's bloodline suffered a series of setbacks, the Son of Spacetime, Konghen Luyun, once again led a team to battle the Heavenly Space God's bloodline. News of every action of the Heavenly Space God's bloodline quickly spread throughout the first chaotic star prison. This clan had always been a fearsome existence. Ever since Konghenching's identity was exposed, everyone had paid close attention to him. Although the Realm Lord had fallen long ago, anyone who was related to him in this world could not be underestimated, let alone the bloodline he had left behind. Almost all of the primal Chaos Divine Tribe cultivators in the first region were focused on the battle between the Heavenly Space God and the Heavenly Space God. This would be an important criterion for them to assess whether or not Konghenching was a threat. After all, Konghenshue, who was trapped in the star prison, was Konghenching's mother. During this period of time, Longchen had also come to understand why Konghenching had been captured by the Heavenly God Sky Devouring clan. It turned out that the Heavenly God Sky Swallowing clan had once acted on the day of the Realm Lord's death. This clan was directly related to the death of the Imperial Lord. Of course, the Emperor Lord had no intention of explaining this matter. He only said bluntly to Longchen, in that battle, the Heavenly God Swallowing clan wasn't even an ant. They weren't the only primal Chaos Divine clan that fought. They don't even know who my enemy is. They only know that if I die, they'll have a chance to fight for the position of the Realm Lord. You can talk about all of this after you become the Realm Lord. Longchen was already used to the Realm Lord's attitude toward this matter. He only knew that the Realm Lord's enemy was most likely not from the ancient holy divine realm. The halberd in his hand was the best proof of this. It was no secret that there were other divine realms besides the ancient holy divine realm. However, was it really someone from another divine realm that had attacked the Realm Lord? More than 10 days passed. Longchen and the others had already arrived at the Goo-Devouring planet. The Goo-Devouring planet was originally known as the Space Devouring planet. It was the planet where the Heavenly God Sky Swallowing clan resided. Ever since the death of the ancient holy divine Realm Lord, this clan was rumored to have participated in the slaying of the ancient holy divine Realm Lord. As such, they changed their name to Goo-Devouring planet. This was a blood-red planet, and it was about the same size as the Void Scar Star. However, when one looked down from the sky, one could still see the 2 mountain ranges that stretched across the planet. The two mountain ranges were like the spines of two blood-red fish. The strangest thing about this planet was that there wasn't a single planet around it. Even the starlight and primal chaos energy had disappeared without a trace. The blood-red planet was like a gaping maw in the night, and the two mountain ranges were like blood-red lips. It was chilling to look at. Qing Xian walked up and said to Long Chen, "The star prison is behind the goo-devouring planet." "There are no other planets behind it." Long Chen nodded and said in a low voice, "All of you will stay outside the goo-devouring planet and find a place to settle down and support me. I'll find a way to enter the star prison myself. I'll definitely walk out within 3 years." Everyone nodded in agreement, but they still insisted on sending Long Chen into the star prison. When everyone went around the goo-devouring planet and saw the starry sky behind it, their expressions changed drastically. They were extremely shocked. Behind the entire planet was a long ring-shaped starry wheel. The size of the outer ring of the starry wheel was comparable to the outline of the goo-devouring planet. The starry wheel was formed by the ruins of countless planets. It turned and moved in the void, but it never left its original place. It was like the shadow of the goo-devouring planet, following closely behind. A shadow. If it was the shadow of the goo-devouring planet, then the starry sky behind the starry wheel was completely dark. The starry sky behind the starry wheel was empty and dead. Not even a trace of meteorite dust could be seen. Everyone looked up and saw that there were 10 huge halos of various colors in the center of the starry wheel. These halos were deep and varied in color. They had a strange brilliance and beauty. Each halo seemed to be a world within the starry wheel. The starlight was like a mighty torrent, rushing towards each of the halos. Only then did everyone understand that it wasn't that there was nothing behind the starry wheel, nor was it that it was a dark place. It was that the halos in the starry wheel were like black holes that swallowed everything. Even the starlight was the same. Qing Xian couldn't help but grab Long Chen's arm. She could feel the terrifying power in the halos. These halos looked magnificent, but they were actually filled with murderous intent. This was the so-called star prison. This place could imprison divine emperors of various levels and suppress them to death. Long Chen patted Qing Xian's hand and said softly, "You can't come with me this time. Besides the sky-swallowing god, only I can enter this place safely." After saying that. Chapter 1257. The star wheel was formed from countless meteors, and within it was a shining star prison. As Long Chen was about to enter the star prison, he carved many Tao inscriptions on an inconspicuous meteor. After the Tao inscriptions were completed, he placed the sky magatama at the center of them. Buzz. After doing all this, he took a deep breath and charged toward the nearest star prison without any hesitation. The first thing he had to deal with was to find out which star prison Kong Henqing was trapped in. The star prison was formed by the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan's power over a long period of time. The starlight and the power of countless stars within it was enough to slowly grind any god emperor to death. If Long Chen wanted to enter, he had to obtain the star cloud. The starry cloud could prevent him from being trapped in the star prison. Pop 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 pop. Long Chen's figure disappeared into the ring of light. The star prison was like a reflection of planet Sky-Swallowing. It followed planet Sky-Swallowing's orbit. This place was extremely important to the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan, so it was naturally guarded by many guards. These guards weren't stationed outside the star prison. Instead, they were stationed inside the star prison. The star prison was originally built to imprison god emperors from opposing clans. Once someone was about to die in the star prison, their soul would be captured at the last moment and executed outside the star prison. This was the tradition of the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan. Because of this, that was why the star prison was so infamous among the Chaos God clans. After Long Chen entered the first star prison, his surroundings rapidly changed. There really was another world within the star prison. Just as the Emperor's remnant soul had said, the star prison was divided into 3 parts. Only the core area contained the most terrifying power of the stars. Buzz. Long Chen had just entered when his entire body was enveloped by invisible rays of light. The Emperor's remnant soul instructed, You have to find a star cloud that can protect you as soon as possible. My divine sense can't protect you for too long. Longchen nodded. Looking at the power of divine sense that was wrapped around his body, he couldn't help but look serious. The power of the divine emperor's remnant soul had once been enough to deceive the heavenly void god, a member of the primal chaos divine tribe. Now, however, the formless power of his divine sense was constantly being attacked. This feeling was like there were countless inexplicable forces continuously attacking him without any blind spots. This was the power of the stars in the star prison. Without any hesitation, Longchen disappeared from where he was and continued to head towards the second area. Less than 10 breaths after he left, a team of more than 10 people appeared at the place he had just entered. These people were covered in jet black scales, and the most terrifying thing was that they had fangs in their mouths, which made people tremble in fear. The leader spoke in human language. "What's the matter? There seems to be a strange fluctuation here just now. Did someone enter the star prison from here?" Just as this person finished speaking, 2 people behind him couldn't help but chuckle. It's most likely a star cloud from the outside world that was dragged into the star prison. You're overthinking things. How many years has it been? Ever since an 8th Order God Emperor risked his life to enter the star prison and caused a huge ruckus, no one has dared to sneak into the star prison for several hundred years. After Konghenching's so-called realm master's woman was captured, the heavenly space god's bloodline stirred up a ruckus for a long time, but no one dared to come here. Who else would come here to seek death? Everyone couldn't help but chuckle as they spoke. It had to be said. Their mouths were filled with fangs, and their bodies were covered in black scales. Their laughter was extremely hair-raising. Just as they finished laughing, the leader of the group glared at them and said in a solemn voice, "Don't underestimate the heavenly space god's bloodline. No one is allowed to mention Konghenching's whereabouts again." Several streaks of black light swept out from his mouth as soon as he finished speaking. After the streaks of black light disappeared, he didn't seem to discover anything amiss. Thus, his furrowed brows relaxed slightly. "Let's continue our patrol." Everyone couldn't help but shake their heads with wry smiles on their faces. Every year, the 10-star prisons would be patrolled by a different team. It could be said that this was a compulsory course for all heavenly gods. Their patrol was more like a formality. After all, even though it was easy for outsiders to enter the star prison, it was extremely difficult for outsiders to leave. Ever since the star prison became famous, almost no one dared to trespass. Everyone couldn't help but feel that their leader was being overly cautious. What they didn't know was that Longchen was only tens of thousands of meters away from them. In fact, Longchen could clearly sense their presence through the Emperor's remnant soul, and he couldn't help but become more cautious. If it weren't for the fact that the Emperor's remnant soul had enveloped him, he would have most likely been detected by the streaks of black light emanating from that person's body. Longchen concealed himself according to the Emperor's divine sense and avoided the patrolling guards as he hurried toward the second level of the star prison. The patrolling guards weren't very strict, and this saved Longchen a lot of time. However, as he ventured deeper into the second level, the Emperor's divine sense began to flicker with divine light due to the starlight. This kind of power wouldn't cause too much damage to the Emperor's remnant soul, but if this continued, he would be discovered sooner or later. He had to find the starlight clouds as soon as possible. The starlight clouds were unique to the star prison, and they were formed from the accumulation of starlight. They were somewhat similar to the heavenly space god's Magatama, and they were unique to the heavenly space god's heavenly space god. Everything produced in the star prison would be absorbed into the heavenly space god's planet devouring. Longchen's luck didn't seem to be bad. He hadn't even ventured deep into the central area, but under the guidance of the Emperor's remnant soul, he had already found the 7 starlight clouds floating in the void. This object wasn't a physical object, but a completely formless object, as if it didn't exist at all. Longchen looked at the empty space in front of him and couldn't help but feel astonished. If it weren't for the Emperor's guidance, no one except the heavenly space god's heavenly space god would have been able to find this object. However, when Longchen's powerful divine sense enveloped his right hand and touched it, he was finally able to hold it in his hand. This feeling was inconceivable, as if he had reached out and grabbed a ball of air. The 7 starlight clouds were in his hand. Longchen hurriedly crushed them all and compressed them around his body with his divine sense. At this moment, the Emperor's remnant soul didn't need to be used to resist the power of the starlight. It was only used to help Longchen conceal his aura. This greatly reduced the pressure on Longchen. After obtaining all this, Longchen looked toward the center of the star prison. He wanted to see how lucky he was. Chapter 1258. The cloud of stars was a special item that could allow people to survive in the star prison. Once they had this item, they could avoid being washed away by the power of the stars. If Longchen's guess was correct, the patrolling soldiers did not seem to have anything on them, but in reality, they were covered by the cloud of stars. Longchen could feel the power of the stars around him weakening. He could not help but smile bitterly. Many people had tried to sneak into the star prison, and many of them had succeeded. However, once they entered, they would be washed away by the power of the stars at all times. They knew that the cloud of stars was a life-saving item, but none of them had been able to find it. It was quite ironic. Of course, even if they could find the cloud of stars, they would only be delaying their deaths. After all, if they did not leave the star prison, who knew how many cloud of stars they would need to survive? Longchen sensed that the patrolling soldiers were not approaching. He quickened his pace and rushed toward the center of the star prison. Buzz! As expected. As soon as he stepped into the center of the star prison, the terrifying cloud of stars rushed toward him like a flood. At this moment, he finally understood why the star prison was so terrifying. The center of the star prison was the source of all the devouring power. The land within 1,000 meters was like a colorful ball of light. Endless light filled every inch of space like an unprecedented, terrifying attack. This light was the cloud of stars and the power of the stars. The two types of power were crazily tearing each other from the outside. It was this tearing power that caused them to madly wash every inch of space. At the center of the ball of light was a black light that looked like a black hole. This black light spun endlessly, and it seemed to even shift the Emperor Lord's soul slightly. What is this black light? It actually emits such a terrifying devouring power. It's this devouring power that attracted the cloud of stars and cloud of stars behind the ancient swallowing star to form the star prison. Longchen could not help but mutter to himself when he sensed the cloud of stars rapidly disappearing from his body. The Emperor Lord pondered for a moment, then replied, "This is the void-swallowing light, also known as the Eye of Star Destruction. It's an item born from the chaotic starry sky. The sky-swallowing god lineage somehow obtained 10 of them." The Emperor Lord did not explain too much, and Longchen did not ask any more questions. He planned to leave this place as soon as possible. His luck was not as good as when he was searching for the stars and clouds. At the very least, the star prison in front of him was not where Kong Henqing was imprisoned. Longchen retreated from the central area and quickly drew in the air. Meanwhile, outside the 10-star prisons, the jade hook above the meteorites in the star wheel flickered imperceptibly, and the Tao patterns around it were activated at this moment. The power and aura of the Tao pattern and the Magatama were completely concealed by the divine sense of the Sovereign Lord that Longchen had left behind. If one did not see this place from a close distance, it would be impossible to discover this place with divine sense. Within the star prison, Longchen's figure instantly disappeared from his original position. It was as if he had teleported. When he opened his eyes again, he was still in the star prison. He could still feel the power of the stars washing over him. He knew that he was already in another star prison. Before entering the star prison, he had used the jade hook to determine the coordinates of each star prison. Once he used the divine sense brand left behind by the Emperor Lord, he could activate the jade hook to teleport through space. It was worth mentioning that this teleportation could not allow him to leave the star prison directly. Otherwise, the heavenly space god's bloodline would have become the bane of the star prison long ago. Even with the assistance of the Emperor Lord's divine sense and the jade hook and Tao patterns left behind in advance, he was still unable to teleport through space. Thus, Longchen could only teleport through the various star prisons. The space jade hook could connect to the various star prisons, but it definitely could not connect to the outside of the star prison. Otherwise, the space jade hook would instantly shatter the moment it crossed the border of the star prison. The power of the stars within the star prison was far too terrifying. Once this power connected to the outside world, it would be like digging a trench in a dam. This trench would only cause the boundless starlight to flow even more rapidly. It was enough to instantly destroy the space jade hook and kill everyone within it. As such, Longchen chose to use the power of the jade hook to teleport through the various star prisons. The power of the 10 star prisons was almost equal, and it was as if he was opening a space jade hook on the same plane. At this moment, just as Longchen was teleporting from the first star prison to the second one, the heavenly space god's army had already arrived on a withered yellow planet millions of kilometers away from the god-devouring star. The leader of this army was Void Scar Luyun. Void Scar Luyun had a pair of wings on his back, which was completely different from the other heavenly space gods. Puchi! The army of 10,000 came to an abrupt halt, and Void Scar Luyun, who was leading the charge, threw up several mouthfuls of blood. His aura became even more chaotic, and an indescribable light flashed between his brows. Void Scar, Black Rain, and the others' expressions changed drastically when they saw this. They hurriedly yelled, "Everyone, prepare! We're not far from the heavenly space-devouring god's territory." The might of the army of 10,000 instantly soared into the sky, and a terrifying power enveloped the entire withered yellow planet. These people were all third-order god emperors, and there were even several thousand fourth-order god emperors. Void Scar, Black Rain, and the others hurriedly rushed to Void Scar Luyun's side and asked, "What's going on? Could it be that the heavenly space-devouring god's territory has already attacked us?" Before Void Scar, Black Rain, could finish his sentence, Void Scar Luyun turned around, and a sinister light flashed in his eyes. Bang, bang, bang. Even though Void Scar, Black Rain, was a fourth-order god emperor, was sent flying several dozen meters, and 2 bowl-sized holes appeared on his chest. The other sixth-order god emperors beside Void Scar Luyun fell silent, and they didn't know what had happened. Void Scar, Black Rain, felt extremely bitter in his heart. At this moment, he was kneeling on one knee, and he didn't dare to utter a single word. He could already see the strange light flashing between Void Scar Luyun's brows, and that was the after-effect of his space jade hook being taken away. He felt extremely bitter in his heart, but he couldn't speak of it. Back then, Void Scar Luyun had personally agreed to the bet with Longchen. Now that something like this had happened, he had suffered greatly. Void Scar Luyun snorted coldly, and his voice was icy cold. "That Longchen bastard is using my space jade hook without restraint. I don't think he has any intention of saving Kong Hen Ching. The power of the space jade hook has been greatly weakened, and my cultivation is starting to suffer. I have to find where he is and take back the space jade hook now." Everyone looked at each other, and shock filled their hearts. Void Scar Luyun's space jade hook had actually fallen into someone else's hands? Chapter 1259. The news that Void Scar Flowing Cloud's space jade had been snatched away began to spread among the 10,000 people. He had no intention of concealing this matter. At this moment, Longchen was already using the power within the space jade. Furthermore, he wasn't using the space jade to manipulate the power of space. This level of usage was already starting to affect him. Now that he was the leader of the group, it was only a matter of time before this matter was discovered. Void Scar Flowing Cloud had already ordered Black Rain to lead a few fourth-order god emperors to search for Longchen. Their attack on the Heavenly Gods faction had also come to a complete halt. In truth, everyone knew that they had only come to the Heavenly Gods faction to vent their anger. Whether or not they could rescue Kong Hen Ching wasn't important. They were only fighting to protect the Heavenly Gods faction's reputation. They didn't even know where Kong Hen Ching was locked up in the Star Prison. At the very least, no one from the other races had ever walked out of the Star Prison alive. During this period of time, Kong Inshua had caused too much of a ruckus. Otherwise, the higher-ups wouldn't have sent them here. It was all to appease Kong Inshui and save the clan's reputation. On the withered yellow planet, everyone set up camp. They weren't too far away from the Heavenly God's faction, but the Heavenly God didn't seem to have any intention of paying them any attention. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. On the other hand, Void Scar Flowing Cloud had vomited blood several times. When Void Scar Black Rain returned, he brought back a piece of news. Flowing Cloud, Longchen left behind traces when he passed through space. He should be near the Heavenly God's faction right now. It's extremely likely that he's planning to rescue Kong Henqing. Void Scar Black Rain's words caused Void Scar Flowing Cloud's frown to deepen. No matter where Longchen was, as long as the Space Jade hadn't returned on its own, it meant that Longchen was still alive and well. When Void Scar Black Rain saw Void Scar Flowing Cloud's reaction, he said in a low voice, "Even though our mission isn't to rescue Kong Henqing, we can't let things drag on like this. Since he's really here, he'll die in the Star Prison sooner or later. When the time comes, the Space Jade will naturally return." Void Scar Flowing Cloud glared at Void Scar Black Rain. However, since they couldn't pinpoint Longchen's exact location, this was the only thing they could do. He only hoped that before Longchen died, he would be able to reduce the loss of Space Scar Magatama's power. "Let's go. We'll wage war against the Heavenly God Sky Devouring clan." On the other side, Longchen had already arrived at the 4th star prison. It was as if all his luck had been used to search for the stars and clouds. In the first 3 star prisons, he had easily found the clouds of stars under the guidance of the Emperor Lord's remnant soul. However, he still hadn't found Kong Henqing's whereabouts. The stars and clouds I've obtained from these 4 star prisons should be enough for my next use. Longchen tried to activate the Sky Magatama again. A moment later, he appeared in the 5th star prison. Not long after Longchen left the 4th star prison, the leader of the 1st star prison appeared. The man's face was solemn and he quickly found the patrol team. At this moment, the majority of the patrolling team in the 4th star prison were in seclusion. They would only send 2 or 3 patrolling team members each time. "What are you doing? Why aren't you patrolling?" the man suddenly shouted at the crowd. Several people who were in seclusion were awakened by his shout. Their faces did not look good. Who didn't know that patrolling the star prison was just a formality? "What do you mean? You should be patrolling the Northwest Star Prison. What are you doing here? Your father's status in the clan is not low. If you change your personality, why do you need to patrol the Star Prison every 2 years? You don't need to worry about us. Just go back to your own Star Prison." This group of people seemed to have a deep opinion of this man. They seemed to be very displeased with his serious and old-fashioned personality. Tungumo's face turned even more ashen. Not only did he not move, he shouted in a deep voice, "I can leave. However, I will definitely report your negligence today and have my father deal with this matter." After saying this, he turned around and prepared to leave. The people behind him gnashed their teeth in anger. However, they were also very afraid. They hurriedly hid their expressions and stopped him. The leader snorted coldly and said, "We'll go patrol right now. Don't be so shameless." When Tungumo saw this, he did not have any intention of falling out with them. He only said in a deep voice, "I've already visited several star prisons today. 3 of them are strange. I want you to thoroughly investigate the starry clouds in this star prison." "Starry clouds?" Everyone's expression changed slightly. Then, they shook their heads and laughed. They all felt that Tungumo was worrying too much. Every star prison had starry clouds. However, countless experts had died in the star prison. That was how they left behind their illustrious names. Among the various primal chaos divine clans, no one except the heavenly god Sky Swallowing clan could find starry clouds. "If you want to investigate, we'll go with you. Do you think the people who enter the star prison are members of our clan?" the leader said as he led Tungumo into the depths of the star prison. 6 hours passed in the blink of an eye. The entire patrol team was gathered at the edge of the star prison. Their expressions were extremely solemn, and the leaders of the patrol team looked like they were covered in ice. They all looked at Tungumo and said, "Big Brother Gumo, I hope you can forgive us for this matter. How about we just forget about it?" Tungumo didn't seem to want to lower himself to their level. "Hurry up and inform the clan that someone has entered the star prison and found starry clouds. This is a critical moment. Not only is Kong Henqing from the heavenly space god's bloodline imprisoned in the star prison, there are also 2 other people. We cannot allow any mishaps to occur." Everyone nodded upon hearing this. Their expressions had completely changed. They suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. When they thought of the other 2 people imprisoned in the star prison, they couldn't help but shudder. The heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan had lost countless divine emperors in the star prison. If something really happened, they would not be able to absolve themselves from the blame. Everyone nodded in agreement. None of them dared to disobey Tungumo, and they all rushed out of the star prison. Tungumo turned to the remaining people and said, "Inform the star prison where Kong Henqing and the other 2 are imprisoned to be on high alert." Everyone left. Tungumo's brows furrowed tightly as he looked at the empty space before him. Starry clouds would be collected from time to time. There were already 4 star prisons here, so there was no way he could match the number of starry clouds. If there were only 1 or 2 star prisons, then it would be fine. After all, it was possible that the previous patrol team had casually collected the starry clouds to replenish themselves. Longchen clicked his tongue in wonder at the current scene. Even though Kong Henqing's cultivation was only at the 3rd Order God Emperor realm, his mastery of the space-time law far surpassed Kong Henqing and Heiyu. Of course. Longchen was very clear in his heart. The reason why Kong Henqing's talent was so strong was most likely related to the Realm Lord. Swoosh! Swoosh! A series of sonic booms could be heard as the members of the heavenly god-devouring clan arrived. They did not seem to dare to get too close to Kong Henqing. When they saw that Kong Henqing was still here, they heaved a sigh of relief. Tungumo pondered for a moment before saying, "I'll stand guard here. All of you, search every corner of the star prison. Also, check the stars and clouds." Everyone nodded and began to search every corner of the star prison. 1 hour later. Before they could finish searching the star prison, the heavenly god-devouring clan issued another order, ordering everyone to leave the star prison. This surprise attack came and went quickly. Longchen was unable to react in time. Longchen looked at Kong Henqing. After confirming that there was no one around, he bowed and said, "Master's wife, you should still remember me. I'm here to save you today. However, I'm afraid that it'll be a little difficult." When Kong Henqing heard Longchen's words, shock appeared on her beautiful face. She couldn't help but ask, "How can you save me? The star prison is not a place you can leave as you wish." While she was speaking, Kong Henqing still did not dare to remove the power of space around Longchen. Her face was incomparably pale, and her fiery red dress was riddled with holes under the starlight. Longchen did not raise his head as he bowed, and this caused Kong Henqing's beautiful face to blush a little. She felt like Longchen was quite meticulous. Longchen did not reply. Instead, he wrapped his divine sense around a few clouds of stars and delivered them to Kong Henqing. Kong Henqing immediately sensed the presence of the clouds of stars, and her expression became even more shocked. She hurriedly received them. After the clouds of stars and stars covered her entire body, Kong Henqing felt the pressure on her body decrease drastically. Her clothes reappeared, and her face instantly regained its color. All of the starlight was blocked outside of her body. At this moment, Longchen raised his head and replied, "I do have a way to leave this place. However, I can only leave with your divine sense. Moreover, I'll need several hours to prepare." When Kong Henqing saw that Longchen was not spouting nonsense, she immediately nodded in agreement. As long as she could leave this place, she was willing to pay the price of reconstructing her physical body. Kong Henqing nodded and said, "Leave the several hours to me. My cultivation base is still enough to completely conceal you in the space behind me. However, I want to ask you another question." Can you take 2 more people with you? Take 2 more people with me? Longchen gestured for Kong Henqing to continue. The star prison was fraught with danger, and taking 2 more people with him would be equivalent to taking a lot of unnecessary risks. Kong Henqing replied in a solemn voice, "Those 2 people are your master's grand disciples. In other words, they're your juniors." Grand disciples? Longchen was completely stunned upon hearing this. However, he still shook his head and said, "It's too dangerous right now. I'll take you with me now. We'll discuss the other 2 at length." In the outside world, the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan didn't withdraw all of their forces from the star prison. They only withdrew the forces in Kong Henqing's star prison. It had to be said. Even if they didn't withdraw, Longchen wouldn't be in any danger. However, he probably wouldn't be able to rescue Kong Henqing in a short period of time. The heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan had withdrawn all of their forces from the star prison because the heavenly space god had launched a large-scale attack. Kong Henqing, Lu Yun, and the others seemed to have also discovered the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan's movements, and they took advantage of this opportunity to launch an attack. After a short period of resistance, the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan's forces did something extremely unusual. They gave up all resistance. In fact, they even informed them of the location of Kong Henqing's star prison. The terrifying power of the spell formation enveloped the entire Sky-Swallowing star. They actually didn't want to fight the heavenly space god star prison. The leader of the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan's forces looked at Kong Henqing and Lu Yun from afar. "You've already attacked us 4 times during this period of time. The heavenly space god star prison is indeed more powerful than ours, but it's impossible for you to rescue Kong Henqing. The star prison is right before your eyes. You can enter at any time. Let's see how many of you can escape." Whoosh. Chapter 1261. The members of the heavenly god Heavenly Swallowing clan blasted one divine light after another into the star prison. The originally calm star prison suddenly began to revolve at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, it began to rumble, and some unknown changes occurred. This scene caused Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others to frown. During this period of time, the Heavenly Space God clan and the Heavenly Swallowing clan had clashed many times. Just as the Heavenly Swallowing clan had said, the Heavenly Swallowing clan had suffered quite a bit in every battle. Due to the Heavenly Space God clan's innate talent, they didn't suffer many casualties. However, those who were defeated would instantly flee into the void. On the other hand, the Heavenly Swallowing clan had suffered quite a few casualties. Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others generally avoided fighting near the star prison. The reason they had suddenly attacked today was because they had discovered that something seemed to be wrong with the star prison. They had seen several troops entering the star prison, which was why they had taken the opportunity to launch an attack. When Streak Wind and Flowing Cloud saw this, he immediately ordered his subordinates to stop attacking and gather behind him, ready for battle. Rumble. Under everyone's watchful eyes. In the entire star prison, there were humanoid figures condensed from starlight appearing in the star prison. The members of the Heavenly Swallowing clan looked at Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and sneered, "Didn't you want to save Kong Henqing? Don't say I didn't give you a chance. There are a total of 20 star stone statues here. All you have to do is destroy them and rescue Kong Henqing." Even so, none of the members of the Heavenly God clan dared to enter the star prison. They didn't believe that the Heavenly Swallowing clan would compromise. The leader of the Heavenly Swallowing clan chuckled coldly before completely sealing off the spell formation around the Star Swallowing clan. Void Scar, Black Rain, turned to Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others. What's going on? What are they trying to do? Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, shook his head and pondered for a moment. They want everyone to see what's going on with the star prison. Can they really enter it? Within the Star Swallowing clan, Tungumo charged to the front of the group. The elder leading the group asked, "Why? Why did you tell them about the star prison where Kong Henqing was imprisoned?" The old man in the lead shook his head and stared at the Tungumo. they will soon know that the 20-star stone statues are formed from the power of the stars. The more stone statues are destroyed, the weaker the star prison will be. Only then will they truly have the intention to save Kong Hen Ching. The person who snuck into the star prison was able to travel through all of the star prisons, so it appears that he's not necessarily a traitor of our race. Instead, he's most likely a member of the heavenly space god's bloodline. Otherwise, why would the heavenly god of space and time interfere with our operation? Since we can't find him, we might as well get rid of them together. Tungumo's expression changed. He immediately understood the decision made by the elder and the clan. They were going to use the star prison to end their battle with the heavenly space god. In other words, they were going to make sure that no one from the chaotic divine tribe dared to enter the star prison ever again. Once the power of the stars in the star prison weaken, they would be able to destroy the star prison through the spell formation. The resulting power would be enough to kill all of the nearby heavenly space god emperors. Isn't this price a little too high? Tungumo couldn't help but ask. The old man harumphed coldly, as if he was already getting a little impatient. This is a decision made by the higher-ups of our race. If someone from the heavenly space god's bloodline can enter the star prison, then we'll make sure that they give up on all thoughts of entering the star prison. The old man's words weren't without merit. It wasn't difficult for the heavenly space god to enter the star prison. However, the most difficult part was how to survive and how to escape from the star prison. Now that someone had already discovered the power of the stars, there was a good chance that the person who had entered the star prison would know how to leave as well. Rather than take a risk, it was better to destroy the star prison to intimidate all of the other races. Tungumo didn't say anything else. Instead, he returned to the edge of the spell formation and continued to observe the changes taking place within the star prison. At this moment, sure enough, Kong Hen, Lu Yun, and the others had already discovered something strange. The divine statues condensed from the power of stars within the star prison gave them far too much information. Kong Hen and Lu Yun fell silent for a long time before turning to Kong Hen and Black Rain. All of the power of stars within the star prison has surged into the bodies of these 10 divine statues. Let's try to bring 100 or so people in to take a look. There's almost no power of stars in the star prison right now, so you should be able to open up a space-time passageway and leave at any time. Even though Kong Hen and Black Rain were feeling quite uneasy, they also felt that Kong Hen and Lu Yun's words were quite reasonable. In the end, they still nodded in agreement. After entering the star prison, all of them were ecstatic. Sure enough, the outermost region of the star prison was no different from an ordinary space. All of the power of stars had already disappeared without a trace. Only then did Kong Hen and Lu Yun lead the others into the star prison. Even so, they still left behind many trump cards and were prepared to enter the star prison at any time. 10 divine statues condensed from the power of stars blocked their path. Unbeknownst to Kong Hen and the others. At this moment, Long Chen, who was also in the star prison, was standing behind Kong Hen Ching. Kong Hen Ching immediately sensed the changes within the star prison, and he exclaimed in astonishment, "What's going on? The power of stars within the star prison is starting to weaken." Even though the power of stars has weakened, there's still not much of a difference here. The star prison has only shrunk in size. Long Chen raised his eyebrows upon hearing this. After a short moment, he shook his head and said, "However, I'm afraid that the heavenly space god's descendants are going to suffer heavy casualties." As Long Chen spoke, he had already carved countless Dao patterns into the space behind Kong Hen Ching and Kong Hen Ching. The complete Dao patterns appeared to be in the shape of a Magatama. Kong Hen Ching saw that the Dao patterns were about to complete, but he suddenly grabbed Long Chen's hand and said, "They entered the star prison to save me. If you go out and warn them now, you should be able to save their lives." A wry smile appeared on Long Chen's face as he looked at Kong Hen Ching. His master's wife was treating him like a life-saving straw. Of course, it wasn't difficult for him to warn them. After all, the star prison wasn't all that dangerous right now. The spell formation was almost complete, so he could take Kong Hen Ching away at any time. "It's not that I don't want to, but there's a rift between me and Kong Hen Ching and Lu Yun. Longchen shook his head and chuckled. If I go out, I'm afraid that not only will they not believe me, they'll even try to capture me. Besides, I don't believe that the heavenly space-engulfing God will be so kind as to let them leave. This star prison belongs to them. Chapter 1262. Within the star prison. Void Scar and Flowing Cloud had made many preparations, and they really did lead their clansmen into a battle against the 20 star divine statues. It had to be said. Void Scar and Flowing Cloud really did plan to rescue Kong Hen Ching. However, just as he was about to unleash a barrage of attacks, he suddenly plummeted from the sky, and his aura became chaotic. His cultivation base was rapidly depleting, as if someone had sucked away his cultivation base. All of the heavenly space god's clansmen turned toward him in unison. However, Void Scar and Flowing Cloud suddenly roared, "The Sky Magatama is here! Longchen is also here!" A battle like this was extremely rare in the heavenly space god's territory, and no one had ever dared to act so recklessly in the star prison. Tun Gumo had been paying close attention to everything that was happening, and his attention was immediately drawn to Void Scar and Flowing Cloud's actions. However, before he had a chance to think, he noticed from the corner of his eye that an inconspicuous meteorite had suddenly been enveloped by a streak of spatial light. The streak of light had yet to dissipate. Tun Gumo's expression changed drastically, and he exclaimed, "A human? How could a human escape from the star prison?" Tun Gumo's roar instantly alarmed all of the heavenly space god's clansmen. Streaks of light instantly shot forth from the heavenly space god's clansmen. Meanwhile, Long Chen's thunderous voice boomed, "All of the heavenly space god's clansmen have retreated. Kong Hen Ching is nowhere to be found in the star prison. They're going to kill all of you here." As soon as his voice fell, Long Chen had no intention of stopping. Instead, he flew off into the distance. His voice traveled into the ears of all of the heavenly space god's clansmen. Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others were completely stunned. They had never thought that Long Chen would appear at a time like this. Void Scar, Black Rain, and the others immediately turned to Void Scar and Flowing Cloud with inquiring gazes. Void Scar and Flowing Cloud endured the pain in his body and roared, "Kill him! I want his Sky Magatama!" Swoosh swoosh. After saying this, Void Scar and Flowing Cloud charged out of the star prison. Close to 10,000 heavenly space gods clansmen followed closely behind. They were also planning to leave the star prison. Long Chen's words earlier filled their hearts with unease. "It's too late to leave now." A cold shout came from the swallowing goo star, and the 10 star statues disappeared in an instant. The entire star prison was restored to its original state in a few breaths' time. The faces of Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others immediately sank into the void. Even so, there were still around 2,000 people trapped within the void. Instantly, the power of the stars engulfed them, and miserable cries rang out incessantly. When Tun Gumo saw this, he immediately turned around and shouted, "Why don't you destroy the star prison and bury these 10,000 people with Kong Hen Ching?" Buried with him? Kong Hen Ching's aura has already completely disappeared. She's no longer inside. Pass down my order. Send 30,000 deity emperors to hunt down the first person who appeared on the star wheel. Long Chen held the Sky Magatama in his hand and flew into the void. In a short while, he had arrived at the meeting place with Jianshi San and the others. As soon as Jianshi San and the others appeared, they immediately waved their hands and took out a bronze boat that was tens of meters long. Elder Su hurriedly said, "This boat can rely on the power of the stars to travel, so it should be enough to shake off the heavenly god space-devouring clan." However, Long Chen didn't even wait for him to finish before he gestured for everyone to board the boat. Although the Sky Magatama gave him the ability to open spatial passageways, it couldn't allow him to teleport over long distances unless he was in a special place. Otherwise, Kong and Shue wouldn't have had to pass through so many spatial black holes to return to the Void Scar star. After boarding the boat, everyone began to pour their chaotic power into it. Just a dozen or so seconds after they left, they sensed a terrifying power behind them. Tens of thousands of Heavenly God space-devouring clan members seemed to have locked onto their location and were flying toward them. It had to be said. At this moment, Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others played an extremely important role. Although they had escaped from the Star Prison, they were still being pursued by the Heavenly God space-devouring clan members. The Heavenly God Spacetime clan members almost instantly gave up on fighting. Instead, they all fled into the void and unleashed mystic techniques in an attempt to escape from this place. Even so, over 1,000 of them still perished. Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, flapped his wings and whipped up a spatial storm. His entire body disappeared from the spot, and when he reappeared, he was only a few kilometers away from Long Chen and the others. "What did you do?" "If it weren't for you, the Heavenly God space-devouring clan wouldn't have been so crazy as to send several times the number of our troops out of the Gobbling Star." Void Scar, Flowing Cloud's voice was filled with killing intent as he roared at Long Chen. Long Chen's pupils contracted when he saw Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, cover such a great distance with a flap of his wings. Then, he couldn't help but chuckle coldly. At this moment, he finally understood why Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the others had charged into the Star Prison without any regard for their own safety. He didn't even think about whether or not he could save Kong Henching. He had already prepared a surefire escape plan. There was no way anyone could stop him. Even if something were to happen within the Star Prison, the only ones who would die would be the others. Why had he done this? Was it all for the sake of winning Kong Henshua's favor? Long Chen stared at Void Scar, intentionally speaking in a cold voice. "Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, do you really think you can save Kong Henching by sending 10,000 people to their deaths? Are you so naive as to think that the Heavenly God space-devouring clan would give you such a good opportunity?" Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, was already fuming with rage. However, when he heard Long Chen's mocking words, his face instantly turned red and green. Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, roared, "I'm only doing this to give Kong Henshua an explanation. Do you really think I'm as stupid as you? There's no way a God Emperor can escape from the Star Prison." Upon hearing this, Long Chen confirmed his suspicions. He stared at Void Scar, Flowing Cloud, and the Heavenly God space-devouring clan members behind him. "Unfortunately, I've already saved Kong Henching." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen's right hand suddenly landed on the hull of the ship. Starlight began to shimmer atop the bronze longship, as if it was outlining the stars of the entire star field. Whoosh! The longship's speed instantly increased by several times. The surrounding scenery had already become blurry to the point of almost disappearing. Upon seeing this, the Heavenly God space-devouring clan members were all stunned. The leader of the Heavenly God space-devouring clan immediately roared, "The ancient star-eyed ship? These people have gone insane. What do we do now? We can't catch up to the ancient star-eyed ship, but they'll most likely disembark soon." At this moment, Tun Gumo suddenly said, "We can go to the demonic abyss and wait for them there. Once they use the ancient star-eyed ship, there's an 80% to 90% chance that they'll stop there, the demonic abyss." Chapter 1263. The Heavenly God Space-Swallowing clan had hunted down many members of the Heavenly Space Gods clan, but they were unable to obtain any information about Long Chen. However, they were unwilling to accept the fact that Kong Henshua had been taken away by Long Chen. They had paid a heavy price to capture Kong Henshua. Furthermore, they had already reported this matter to the Heavenly Void God clan. "Tun Gumo, since you're certain that the star-tied ancient ship will stop in the demonic abyss, you'll lead a team to kill Kong Henching. Kong Henshua has to be alive. At the very least, she has to reach the Star Prison alive. She has to die within the Star Wheel." Tun Gumo nodded solemnly. He knew that the decision made by the higher-ups of his clan was not baseless. Kong Henshua was the Realm Lord's woman. She was someone that the Heavenly Void God clan had personally ordered to remain in the Star Prison. Even if she died, she had to die in the Star Prison. The Heavenly Void God clan would never compromise when it came to matters related to the Realm Lord. This clan had once participated in the struggle for the Realm Lord's position. Tungumo had used the Star-Tide ancient ship several hundred years ago. He was extremely certain that the Star-Tide ancient ship would stop in the demonic abyss. The demonic abyss Star Sea. This was the place where the Realm Lord had condensed the demonic star dragon bone. This place had long since become a dangerous place that all Primal Chaos Divine Tribe members would avoid. On the other side, Long Chen and the others were on the Star-Tide ancient ship. When he tried to stop the ship, he discovered that he was completely powerless. It was as if the ship was being torn apart by countless forces. He couldn't even control its direction. When Elder Su and the others saw that Long Chen was about to disembark, they immediately stopped him. Elder Su replied to Long Chen in a low voice, "We've prepared 3 plans. This Star-Tide ancient ship is the worst plan, but it's also the fastest one. Unless the ship stops on its own, it's extremely likely that anyone who disembarks will be crushed by the power of the Star-Tide." Long Chen's brows furrowed slightly, but he did not blame them. After all, in that situation, the Star-Tide ancient ship was most likely their only option. Buzz. Long Chen pondered for a moment before he waved his right hand. With a flash of light, Kong Hen Shue's spirit soul appeared before everyone. Meanwhile, Long Chen looked at the empty space and suddenly said, "Air Scar, Flowing Cloud, how long are you going to follow us?" Everyone looked at Kong Hen Shue in shock. The sky-swallowing heavenly god star prison was extremely famous. However, in the end, Kong Hen Shue was still rescued by Long Chen. While they were shocked, everyone followed Long Chen's gaze and looked into the distance behind them. As expected. As the void rippled, Void Scar and Flowing Cloud's wings rose and fell, and they actually managed to catch the galloping ancient ship. Elder Su and the others clicked their tongues in wonder. Zhu Zixue even muttered, "It seems like the speed of this ancient tidal boat isn't as terrifying as the Black Merchant described it to be." As soon as he finished speaking, Kong Hen Snow looked at Void Scar Flowing Cloud and said, "It's not that the Star-Tide ancient ship is too slow. It's just that Void Scar Flowing Cloud is constantly moving through the gaps in space. Behind him is the space-time feather. Once it's activated, it'll be able to unleash our race's innate ability to the extreme." Void Scar Flowing Cloud turned to look at Long Chen and the others with an expression of extreme shock on his face. Never would he have thought that Long Chen would actually be able to rescue Kong Hen Shue. The Heavenly Space God's bloodline had attacked the Heavenly God swallowing Heavenly God's bloodline many times, and they had no hope of rescuing Kong Hen Shue. However, Long Chen had managed to do so. This was simply inconceivable. Void Scar Flowing Cloud continued to follow closely behind the Star-Tide ancient ship. Then, he said in a cold voice, "Long Chen, toss down the Sky Magatama." Long Chen waved his right hand, and the Sky Magatama flashed incessantly. "I've borrowed this item for 3 years. If you want it, come and take it yourself." Swish swish. As soon as he finished speaking, the ancient tidal boat suddenly accelerated explosively and disappeared on the spot. Kong Hen Shue's eyes furrowed as he said to Long Chen, "Void Scar Flowing Cloud is a member of the Heavenly Space God's bloodline, after all. He shouldn't be much of a threat to us." However, Long Chen shook his head. Void Scar Flowing Cloud was a vicious person. After suffering such a huge loss, he definitely wasn't going to let this matter rest. He turned to Kong Hen Shue and said, "I hope you can keep this a secret from me. Don't tell anyone how I escaped from the star prison." Kong Hen Shue stared deeply at Long Chen before nodding in agreement. She was only able to escape from the star prison because she had hidden her divine sense within the Dragon Palace. This had also been approved by the Imperial Master. Long Chen had used the power of the chaotic dragon bone and the Sky Magatama to force his way out of the star prison. The powerful starlight had almost destroyed his entire body, but he was able to use the chaotic dragon bone to regenerate his physical body. If he wanted to bring Kong Hen Shue out, he would have to hide her divine sense within the Dragon Palace. Time flashed around them. No one knew how much time had passed. The Star-Tide ancient ship's bizarre speed made them feel as if they were in a space-time vortex. They couldn't sense the flow of time at all. In fact, they didn't even know how much time they had traveled at this speed. All they knew was that the star-tide ancient ship was gradually slowing down. The scenery around them gradually solidified again. Kong Hen Shui looked at the outside world, and a hint of shock and fear appeared on her divine sense. How did we get here? Elder Su and the others started to ask about this place. Longchen looked around and muttered, "This is the Devil Abyss of the Stellar Sea, the place where the World Lord personally massacred, Creek." Kong Hen Shui gestured for everyone to try jumping off the star-tide ancient ship. However, they quickly shook their heads and smiled bitterly. The moment their bodies left the star-tide ancient ship, they would be instantly crushed. Once the star-tide ancient ship started to move forward, no one would be able to get off it. This kind of power was almost on par with the star prison's power. Rumble! Before they could react, streaks of black light appeared 10,000 meters away. Countless streaks of black light shot through the air and landed on the star-tide ancient ship. The Heavenly God space-devouring clan's members were already standing at the edge of the Devil Abyss. Tun Gumo led more than 10,000 Fifth Order God Emperors in an attempt to stop the star-tide ancient ship from entering the Devil Abyss. At this moment, the star-tide ancient ship seemed to have a mind of its own as it suddenly accelerated. It dodged everyone's attacks and charged into the Devil Abyss right in front of everyone's eyes. When Tun Gumo saw this, there wasn't a trace of shock in his eyes. Instead, there was a sharp light in his eyes. As expected. He muttered to himself. That thing really exists in the Devil Abyss of the Star Sea. Swish. 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 As soon as he finished speaking, he led the Heavenly God space-devouring clan's members into the Devil Abyss of the Star Sea. Many of the Heavenly God space-devouring clan's members hesitated as they paced back and forth outside the Devil Abyss. Chapter 1264. After everyone had entered the Devil Abyss, Air Scar Flowing Cloud appeared from the void. His expression was ugly at this moment. Long Chen and the others didn't know the direction they were heading in, but Air Scar Flowing Cloud knew exactly where they were heading. The star-tide ancient ship had traveled several times the distance between the devouring star and the Devil Abyss. Otherwise, the Heavenly God devouring Heavenly God wouldn't have stayed behind to block the calamity. The only thing Air Scar Flowing Cloud didn't expect was that the star-tide ancient ship would be able to dodge the attacks of over 10,000 Fifth Order God Emperors. What puzzled him even more was that Tun Gumo had led 10,000 people into the Devil Abyss. Who in the entire universe didn't know that the Devil Abyss was a land of death? Countless God Emperors had died in there. This place is probably no less terrifying than the Star Prison. I wonder if my space Magatama can return to my clan after his death. Air Scar Flowing Cloud's heart was in a mess. After a while, he took a deep breath and a determined look appeared in his eyes. He followed closely behind Air Scar Flowing Cloud into the Devil Abyss. He couldn't lose the space Magatama. Otherwise, his cultivation would deteriorate and he would be stuck at the First Order God Emperor realm for the rest of his life. He couldn't accept that kind of price. The moment he stepped into the Devil Abyss, he only wanted to tear Longchen into pieces. If Longchen hadn't appeared, how could there be so many variables out of nowhere? The Devil Abyss was like a giant black hole that spanned across a galaxy. This place was really similar to the space behind the Star Prison. There was no starlight here, no stars, and everything was as silent as the night. There was only one difference. This place was filled with unprecedented devil chi and a terrifying aura of death. After everyone stepped into the Devil Abyss, this news reached the ears of the Heavenly God devouring Heavenly God and the Heavenly God devouring Heavenly God. The two Chaos God tribes were in an uproar, especially the Heavenly God devouring Heavenly God. The old-fashioned Tun Gumo actually led 10,000 Fifth Order God Emperors into the Devil Abyss without asking for permission. The Heavenly God devouring Heavenly God quickly found Tun Gumo's father. The old man's face was ashen. He clearly knew the severity of this matter. Over 10,000 Fifth Order God Emperors had mobilized because they were confident that they could take down Kong Hen Shui. However, they had never imagined that Tungumo would send so many people to their deaths. Tungumo's father arrived at the meeting hall. Voices of questioning rose one after another. Facing the pressure from his people, he could not help but compromise. My son has always thought that this item is in the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean. It is just something that the Star-Tide Ancient Ark uses to guide it. The many upper echelons of the ancient devouring heaven god bloodline watched as the old man threw out a leather cloth covered in scales. The person sitting in the middle stretched out his hand and caught it. The scale armor was nothing special. It seemed to be part of a certain primal chaos god race's body. However, when everyone saw the patterns engraved on the leather armor, they couldn't help but frown. Is this the path of the stars on the ancient star-dyed boat? Between the words, the person's voice became hotter and hotter. If this item really exists in the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean, then this trip is within reason. However, how many rumors have there been about this item? How many primal chaos god race members have died because of it? Why would he take the risk to bring 10,000 people into the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean? In fact, the patterns on the leather armor were the reason why Tungumo had taken the risk to board the ancient star-dyed boat. Even though he had made ample preparations, he had almost died at the edge of the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean. Of course, this also made him believe the words on the leather armor. As long as he boarded the ancient star-dyed boat according to the time marked on the leather armor, he would eventually reach the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean. This also proved that what the leather armor said was most likely true. If that was the case, there was a high chance that the treasure was in the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean. After his first attempt, he had been preparing for this. When he saw Long Chen and the others board the ancient star-dyed boat at the right time, he had already decided to take the risk and enter the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean to search for the treasure. It had to be said, if it wasn't for Long Chen's actions, he wouldn't have brought 10,000 Fifth-Order God Emperors to take the risk, especially with the ancient black space-devouring token in his hand. With the token in his hand, he could command 10,000 people to listen to his orders. Astral Wings. This item was the most mysterious pair of auxiliary chaos divine artifacts in the chaos space. This item had appeared countless times in the primal chaos god race's ears. For countless years, countless people had obtained all kinds of information through various channels to search for this item. However, not a single person had managed to obtain this item. On the contrary, more and more people had died because of this item. There were even people who believed that the so-called astral wings were a lie. In the chaos space, there was no one who had refined this item. At this moment, regardless of the rumors in the past and the number of people who had died because of this item, at least this time, Tungumo believed his own guess. Taking advantage of the fact that he was chasing after Long Chen, he led 10,000 Fifth-Order God Emperors into the Devil Abyss. He was a meticulous and old-fashioned person, but this time, he decided to take the risk for the first time in his life. Astral Wings. It was rumored that this item could find the wings of a secret treasure. It was rumored that this item could obtain all fortune in the world. It was rumored that this item was comparable to the world-suppressing cauldron. At this moment, Tungumo had led 10,000 people deep into the Devil Abyss. In the distance, Long Chen and the others were still standing on the Star-Tide ancient ship. The ancient ship's speed wasn't fast, but it seemed to follow a certain route as it went deeper into the Devil Abyss. The heavenly sky-devouring god had also tried to attack them, but every attack was countered by the Star-Tide ancient ship. This feeling made them feel extremely helpless. On the Star-Tide ancient ship, there was probably no one in the primal chaos god race who didn't know this name. Ever since this item was discovered by a certain primal chaos god race in a mysterious space, it had been circulated in large quantities due to its terrifying speed. The speed at which this item disappeared after being circulated was so fast that it made one's hair stand on end. Only 1 in 10,000 primal chaos god races people managed to survive after using this item. Due to its terrifying speed, it was impossible to control this item. It was as if the tides of the stars were its driving force, and it was also its direction. This item quickly disappeared from everyone's sight and became the research object of many primal chaos god race experts who were proficient in Tao patterns and array formations. Of course, there was also a portion of this item that continued to circulate in the market. Many black-hearted merchants sold it to primal chaos god race experts who had never seen the market before. Chapter 1265. Within the Devil Abyss. Long Chen and the others had been on the star-tide ancient ship for an entire month. If one were to look down from tens of thousands of meters in the air, they would see an extremely strange scene. Tun Gumo led the 10,000 members of the Empyrean God's bloodline in hot pursuit of the slow-moving star-tide Arkansas. Behind them, Airstreak and Flowing Cloud had concealed themselves like assassins. The star-tide ancient ship was like a bright lamp in this dark abyss that did not even have a single meteor. Tun Gumo and the others followed closely behind the ancient ship, but they did not dare to get within 100 meters of the ship. Many of the sky-swallowing god clansmen could only shake their heads and smile bitterly. It was not that they had not tried to attack Long Chen and the others, but the 100-meter distance was like a chasm that no attack could cross. Tun Gumo even stopped them from trying to stop the ship. Only then did the others regain their senses. This was the Devil Abyss. They had followed the ancient ship deep into the Devil Abyss, and when they turned around, all they could see was darkness. A few of the people following them felt less and less confident. They could not help but ask Tun Gumo, "Do we still have a chance to get out?" The Devil Abyss is said to be a land of death created by the Realm Master's attack. Any divine emperor who steps into this place will not be able to leave if they cannot find the exit. We really should not have followed them in. Tun Gumo, you used the ancient black space swallowing command to bring us here. Did you get permission from your clan? The unease in everyone's hearts grew stronger and stronger, but when they looked at Tun Gumo, they saw that the light in his eyes was growing brighter and brighter. For them to reach such a level, everyone knew what this gaze meant. Greed. The voices of these people stopped abruptly. They were very familiar with Tun Gumo because of the reputation of Tun Gumo's father. Tun Gumo's inflexibility and unsociability had been ostracized by many in the clan. Even they were no exception. They had never seen such a greedy gaze in Tun Gumo's eyes. Thump thump. Everyone stopped in their tracks. Their bodies glowed with divine light as they said in a low voice, "Tun Gumo, what is this place? You are not here to capture Kong Hen Shui." When Tun Gumo turned around, the greed in his eyes turned cold as he sneered, "I do have an artifact I must obtain, but I can't tell you what it is yet. You have no way out now. Only by following me will you have a chance to return." Between the words, Tun Gumo took out the ancient black space swallowing token again. This was the command token that was given to him by the clan after they noticed the abnormality in the star prison. Now, it had become his trump card to control the clan members. The leader looked at Tun Gumo and said in a deep voice, "If this goes on, we might all die here. You have to explain everything clearly." Bang! Tun Gumo as soon as the man finished speaking. The token in his hand flashed with a black light, and a huge bloody mouth came out with a whistling sound. In an instant, it fell towards the man. The surrounding people's expressions changed drastically as they retreated. The bloody mouth disappeared in a flash. When it flew back into the space-swallowing token, there was an additional soul in it. Tun Gumo said in a cold voice, "When you followed me to battle, the clan had already left your clan's mark in the space-swallowing token. If you don't obey, you will be killed without mercy. Since I can bring you in, I can also bring you out. Otherwise, if you turn back now, you will die within 100 meters." Tun Gumo's words made everyone look at each other. For a moment, they did not know what to do. The 10,000-strong group was more than 100 meters apart. No one believed Tun Gumo's words. However, they were afraid of the space-swallowing token in his hand. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the back of the 10,000-strong group, more than 100 people left the group at the same time. They quickly retreated as if they wanted to leave Tun Gumo and leave the demonic abyss of the Star Ocean. When Tun Gumo saw this, he did not intend to take out the space-swallowing token. The rest of the people looked in the direction that the 100-plus people had left. Before they could say anything, they saw that the 100-plus people had disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 divine emperors had disappeared. How could this be? The heavenly god of swallowing space was completely stunned. Although it was dark here, Long Chen and the others' ancient Star Ocean boat were like bright lamps in the night. This light was enough for them to see thousands of meters away. However, the 100+ people had really disappeared. They were not more than 100 meters away from the group that Tongumo had said they would turn back. At this moment, everyone finally understood that the seemingly calm demonic abyss of the Star Ocean was actually filled with murderous intent. When Tongumo saw this, he said, "Is there anyone else who wants to leave now? If you follow me, you will still have a chance to leave." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to leave. However, he had only taken a few steps when he saw a streak of light fly toward him from behind. This person had a pair of wings on his back. It was Scarluyun. Scarluyun's face was filled with shock and fear. The wings on his back flapped rapidly. Seeing this, the members of the heavenly sky-swallowing gods faction all frowned. The people behind them instantly surrounded Void Scar and Flowing Cloud. Scarluyun? You're here as well? Scarluyun of the heavenly space god's bloodline. Killing him will be a great contribution to our tribe. This person is following us. He's not friendly. Both Kong Han Shui and Kong Han Luyun were members of the heavenly space god's bloodline, so they had no choice but to be on guard. Tongumo didn't hesitate in the slightest. He said in a low voice, Scarluyun, you're the one who brought this upon yourself. Don't blame us for what happens next. Kill! Wait a moment. Kong Han Luyun hurriedly yelled at Tongumo, "You're here for Kong Han Shui. I can lend you a hand. I only want Long Chen's life." Tongumo's pupils contracted when he heard this. He said in an indifferent voice, "We have 10,000 people here. We don't need a divine emperor like you. You've killed many of our tribesmen in the past few times you visited our tribe." Void Scar and Flowing Cloud looked at Tongumo, flapped their wings, and said in a deep voice, "I can still use a portion of the power of space here. If you really want to leave this place, I will definitely be able to help. Remember what you just said. If you can really use your spatial power, then Long Chen is yours to deal with." Tongumo paused for a moment before gesturing for Scarluyun to follow behind him. He knew why Scarluyun had suddenly appeared and joined them. He had to have seen how terrifying the demonic abyss was. Tongumo's guess was correct. Scarluyun had been following behind them. In the instant that the 100 or so people disappeared, he instinctively tried to sense the spatial power in this place. In that instant, he sensed many strange creatures within the void of darkness. Chapter 1266. On the star-tide ancient ship. The expressions of Long Chen and the others were all extremely unsightly. They never thought that they would be brought into the demonic abyss by this ship. Not only that. At this moment, they were being chased by the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan. If it weren't for the fact that the ancient ship hadn't stopped and that a mysterious power had appeared, they would have been annihilated by the attacks. Jianshi Sam looked at the star-tide ancient ship that had almost stopped and asked Long Chen, "Master, the ship is about to stop." The faces of Old Su and Zhu Zizhua from the heavenly destruction god's bloodline immediately turned ashen. Their gazes all turned toward Long Chen. Long Chen smiled bitterly. This star-tide ancient ship had been prepared by Old Su and the others. Now, it had actually rushed all the way to the demonic abyss. This was clearly not a good place. The worst thing was that they hadn't been able to escape the pursuit of the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan. This matter made Old Su and the others feel extremely awkward. They couldn't understand why the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan would be waiting for them in the demonic abyss. Creak, creak. The star-tide ancient ship finally lost all momentum and came to a stop. However, these two strange sounds caused Long Chen and the others to tremble. There were sounds coming from the bottom of the ship. For a moment, they couldn't even care about the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan behind them. They leaped to the bottom of the ship. As far as their eyes could see, there was nothing. Everyone's bodies glowed with resplendent light as they released their divine senses. At this moment, only then did they realize that cracks were appearing on the bottom of the ship at an extremely fast speed. Longchen focused his gaze and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Qing Xian subconsciously shrank behind Longchen. Every one of these cracks was a semicircular groove, and there were many barbs on it. They were crooked and extremely irregular. Young master, these were scratched out. Qing Xian's face was slightly pale, and her voice gradually trembled. After Qing Xian finished speaking, everyone couldn't help but look toward her fingers. Only then did they discover that the cracks on the bottom of the ship were actually marks left behind by fingernails. But what kind of creature could dig its nails so deep into the bottom of the boat? Stop pretending. Jian Shan snorted coldly, and several streaks of dazzling sword light pierced through the air, passing several meters below the ship. The sword light flew past them in a straight line, heading straight for the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan. Longchen and the others looked at the incessant finger marks on the star-tied ancient boat, and their brows furrowed even tighter. All of a sudden, they shouted, "Put away the star-tied ancient boat!" Elder Su practically didn't hesitate in the slightest when he heard this, and he directly waved his hand to put away the ancient ark. Ah! The moment the ancient boat was put away, everyone heard a painful cry. The instant this voice fell, Elder Su's entire body was torn apart from the middle. Blood and flesh sprayed into the air. Whoosh! Elder Su's complete body was split into two, and then it was torn apart by a pair of invisible hands. Longchen and the others had already made their moves, but none of their attacks could stop the scene in front of them. Suppress! When Elder Su's divine soul escaped, his face was already filled with terror. His divine soul was actually torn apart from the middle in an instant. Longchen's halberd's first seal was instantly undone, and light flew out, landing on Elder Su's divine soul that was about to be torn apart. Elder Su's Kobe instantly stopped in place, enveloped by the light of the seal. Longchen reached out and grabbed him. "Let's go!" Longchen's entire face was incomparably solemn, and with a roar, he quickly flew into the distance with Qing Xian. Elder Su had almost been killed in front of everyone in a few short breaths, and this was truly inconceivable. The most terrifying thing was that even the Emperor Lord's remnant soul hadn't discovered anything strange here. This feeling made Longchen have no confidence to continue staying here. Not to mention, they had the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan behind them. At this very moment, they could only do their best to shake off the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan. In reality, if the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan had really swarmed the star-tied ancient ark the moment it stopped, Longchen and the others probably wouldn't have been able to escape unscathed. However, the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan remained standing in the same spot. Tun Gumo and the others' expressions weren't any better than Longchen's. They had seen what Longchen and the others had experienced, especially the moment when Elder Su was torn apart. It had truly shocked them. They had clearly felt the strength of a 5th or 6th order god emperor when Elder Su had struggled to break free. Even with his cultivation realm, he hadn't been able to resist at all. In fact, none of them had even seen who had attacked, Scar Flowing Cloud. Tun Gumo felt a chill run down his spine as he watched Longchen and the others walk further and further away. "You go in front and watch." Scar Flowing Cloud's face instantly darkened. The heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan members had already surrounded them. Scar Flowing Cloud was gradually forced to the front of the group. He said in a frosty voice, "Tun Gumo, you're sending me to my death." Tun Gumo said in a low voice, "If you can really use the power of space here, you might still have a chance to survive. If you can survive, then it means that there's a reason for us to cooperate." Scar Flowing Cloud looked at the tens of thousands of heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan members in front of him. In the end, he sucked in a deep breath of turbid air. A divine light of a different color shot into the sky from his wings, and it seemed to disperse some of the darkness. He didn't directly charge towards the place where Longchen and the others had stopped. Instead, he took a detour 100 meters to the left in an attempt to bypass this place. the heavenly god sky-swallowing clan members stared fixedly at air scar-flowing cloud. They wanted to see if the terrifying situation that Elder Su had encountered would repeat itself. Contrary to everyone's expectations, air scar-flowing cloud actually passed through this place as if there was no one around. Upon seeing this, Tungumo gestured for the people behind him to follow air scar-flowing cloud's path. The tens of thousands of heavenly god sky-swallowing clan members quickly circled around the place where Longchen had just appeared. Strangely enough, air scar-flowing cloud didn't show any intention of running away. Instead, he continued to wait for Tungumo and the others to follow him. Tungumo and the other higher-ranking heavenly god sky-swallowing clan members finally exchanged a glance before slowly walking forward. In fact, Tungumo couldn't help but slow down slightly. They all couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. They felt like they had been given a false alarm. However, they had only taken a few steps when they discovered that the other heavenly god sky-swallowing clan members who were standing beside air scar-flowing cloud had all retreated with extremely ugly expressions. They reflexively turned around to look. Only then did they discover that Tungumo's entire body had been torn apart from the top of his head. It was as if 5 sharp objects had sliced through his body from top to bottom. Retreat! The hairs on their bodies stood on end. Chapter 1267. Everyone watched as Tungumo's body was slowly being torn apart. Their hearts were filled with fear and confusion. What exactly was in this place? Why did it attack Longchen and the others? Why did it suddenly attack Tungumo? Close to 10,000 people had walked through this place safely, but Tungumo was the last to walk, and this terrifying scene appeared in front of them. Buzz. Just as everyone thought that Tungumo was going to die, they saw his dantian emit a blinding light. This light was actually the shadow of a ferocious beast. The moment the ferocious beast appeared, it roared and dispersed the darkness around Tungumo's body. The injuries on his body disappeared without a trace. Tungumo's body glowed with divine light. His figure instantly left his original spot and charged towards the group. Air Scar and Luyun looked at Tungumo, and their eyes shone brightly. The corners of their mouths revealed an undetectable smile. On the other side, while Elder Su and the others were running, they noticed that Longchen's figure suddenly stopped. It was as if he was completely attracted by the beast's roar. Even though it had been a long time, he still remembered this roar clearly. Qing Xian and Jianzhi San saw that Longchen was stunned. They also felt that something was wrong. Before Longchen could speak, Qing Xian spoke first. "Young master, that beast's roar seems familiar." Jianzhi San couldn't help but nod, as if he agreed with Qing Xian. Longchen's eyes narrowed, and his voice became more agitated. "That's the roar of the Tao Tai battle soul." Jianzhi San and Qing Xian instantly understood. In the corpse world, the 9 great divine beast battle souls had found the most suitable body in the current world. However, after the last battle, they didn't hesitate to use the power of the World Lord's previous life to help Longchen kill the enemy. Their origin should be in Longchen's hands. Why would the roar of the Tao Tai fighting soul appear in the Devil Abyss? Someone here has obtained the true body of Tao Tai. Longchen's voice became more and more excited. This was what the Emperor Lord had told him. According to the Emperor Lord, the physical bodies of the 9 great divine beast fighting souls should have ceased to exist a long time ago. It was really unexpected for them to appear here. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul said to Longchen, "When I was the Sector Lord, I cultivated the Primal Chaos Golden Code. I created the most suitable bodies for them. If they can return to their physical bodies, they will be able to completely regain their past strength." "What level is the strength of the past?" Longchen continued to ask. "Peak Godly Emperor." Hiss. Longchen could not help but gasp. As the Emperor Lord spoke, he shook his head and sighed. He muttered to himself, "Ever since they used the bodies I created, none of their cultivations have changed. I'm guessing that the 9 great divine beast fighting souls actually have their own physical bodies. Their strength is directly related to their physical bodies." While Longchen was hesitating, Zhu Xin suddenly said, "The thing related to Tao Tai that you mentioned came from the leader of the sky-swallowing god's bloodline. I can feel the terrifying aura of destruction that erupted from his body just now." Long Chen looked deeply at Zhu Xin and nodded. While everyone was still talking, Qing Xian pointed up and asked everyone to look up. Long Chen and the others looked up and saw golden feathers falling down like dancing butterflies. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, more and more golden leaves gradually fell in front of everyone. Long Chen and the others did not dare to relax. Their bodies were instantly wrapped in golden light. For a moment, the entire space was filled with golden feathers that fell from above like leaves swept by a strong wind. A golden feather fell on Long Chen's shoulder first. Long Chen's eyes flickered as he looked at the feather. The golden feather was not a physical object. Instead, it was completely condensed from golden light. Before Long Chen could take a closer look, the golden feather disappeared from Long Chen's shoulder. It completely disappeared without a trace. After Long Chen, Jian San and the others also gradually fell on the golden feathers. In the end, they disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the members of the sky-swallowing god's bloodline, who were just about to continue chasing after Long Chen and the others, also encountered the same situation. Golden feathers fell from everyone's body one after another. Soon, everyone discovered something that puzzled them. Some of these feathers only fell on 1 person, some fell on 2, and some even fell on 3 or 4. It was not a coincidence that fewer feathers fell on someone's body. It was just that these feathers could not be stopped even if one reached out to grab them. These feathers were attached to each person according to their different aptitudes. What exactly is this thing? Why are there so many strange things in this place? Jian San muttered to himself as he looked at the golden feathers that were continuously fusing into his body. Elder Su and the others tried to avoid these golden feathers. However, no matter how they moved, these feathers were like maggots that latched onto their bones. Only Qing Xian's body was fused with a single feather. After that, no more golden feathers fell on him. This scene actually lasted for more than 2 hours. Everyone stood dumbfounded. After witnessing Elder Su's scene, no one dared to act rashly. Jian San's body had 5 feathers, while the others all had 3. Long Chen looked at the abyss-like void below him that was almost completely filled with golden feathers. He could not help but frown. He pondered for a moment and waved his right hand. Elder Su's soul appeared in front of everyone. When everyone looked at Elder Su's soul, they raised their eyebrows. Elder Su's soul had always been in Long Chen's hands. Unexpectedly, there were also 3 golden feathers floating in it. I'm afraid that there are many things hidden in this demonic abyss that we can't detect. The feathers that have fallen in these 2 hours have already exceeded the limit that everyone here can bear. Long Chen's eyes stared fixedly at the clusters of golden feathers below. Everyone focused their eyes and only then did they realize that it was just as Long Chen said. Every cluster of golden feathers was made up of 2 or 3 feathers floating together. The golden feathers in the sky gradually became sparse. It was as if the heavy snow was about to stop. Finally, every single feather stopped falling. However, everyone realized that the surrounding darkness was gradually dispelled. Clusters of orange brilliance like the scorching sun filled the space as far as their eyes could see. Long Chen raised his head and looked at the sky along with the brilliance. At this moment, almost everyone looked up. It was a huge skeleton that was at least 10,000 feet long. This skeleton was covered in a dense orange brilliance. There was not a trace of flesh on it. Only slender bones intertwined with each other to form a profound and unfathomable pattern. It was filled with an ancient and mysterious aura. With a single glance, everyone felt as if there were countless symphonies in front of their eyes. Chapter 1268. The heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan, as well as Kong Hen Shui and the others, began to cry out in terror. Many of them even began to flee upwards, as if an unprecedented terror was lurking below them. Kong Hen Shui, Lu Yun, Tun Gumo, and the others all subconsciously looked down. A terrifying scene instantly appeared before their eyes. Beneath their feet was the void of space and the devil abyss. There were actually countless cage-like places in the void. There were close to 10,000 of these cages. What caused everyone to feel an indescribable terror was the scene within the cages. There were numerous humans whose bodies exuded an aura of death. In reality, these humans could no longer be called humans. Their heads extended from the top of their heads, and they dragged behind them for at least 5 to 6 meters. The fingernails on their 10 fingers were so long that it caused one's hair to stand on end. They were curved like long whips and coiled together. Black blood continuously flowed out from their bodies. Before the black blood could drip down, a scarlet tongue extended out from the dense and messy hair behind their heads and licked it. If one were to take a closer look, they would discover that there was actually a face with green eyes and sharp fangs behind their heads. What kind of monster is this? I've never seen such a monster in the primal chaos star before. One of the higher-ups beside Tungumo couldn't help but want to retreat upwards. Everyone could see that the monster that had attacked Tungumo was one of the two-faced monsters. However, for some reason, that monster wasn't in one of the cages. If such a terrifying monster was released, all of them would probably die a violent death. Tungumo, hurry up and take us away from here. This devil abyss isn't something that we can explore. Only those at the 8th Order God Emperor realm and above have a chance of surviving such a terrifying power. You're trying to kill all of us. Tungumo, you almost died for no reason just now. Are you still so stubborn? Everyone treated Tungumo as their last hope. Tungumo acted as if he didn't hear their words. His eyes were fixed on the two-faced specters in the cages below. To be more precise, he was staring at the golden feathers that flickered faintly within their bodies. He knew that it was the astral wings. This item could search for all creation in the world. You can't leave now. Tungumo seemed to have gone crazy. His voice was close to a roar. His eyes were completely filled with excitement. Streak wind and flowing cloud instinctively put some distance between them as the divine light on his wings retracted. Just as Tungumo finished speaking, a black dot appeared on the orange skeleton above his head. Everyone focused their gazes and discovered that this black dot was also a two-faced ghost. However, there was not a single trace of black chi on the ghost's body, nor was there any black blood flowing out of it. Instead, its entire body was emitting an almost tangible orange glow. His gaze seemed to have a mind of its own, gradually shifting from Tungumo and the others to Longchen and the others. This pair of orange glowing eyes finally landed on Longchen. A trace of confusion seemed to appear in his eyes as he stared blankly for a full 4 to 5 breaths before moving his gaze away. This strange ghost actually spoke in the human language. If you want to leave this place, condense the astral wings again. His words were also very casual, filled with the tone of an ordinary person's conversation. Unfortunately, as soon as these words were spoken, the entire scene instantly became somewhat chaotic. Even Longchen and the others were completely stunned. Elder Su and Zhu Zizhua both cried out in shock, their mouths filled with confusion. Astral wings? How is this possible? How can there be astral wings here? These things really exist. Astral wings? Do we really have a chance to obtain a treasure of this level? Isn't this thing just a legend? How many years has it been since it appeared here? It's definitely fake. This is impossible. Everyone's words were somewhat chaotic, but they were also filled with disbelief and excitement. Although Jianshi San and Qin Xian didn't know what the astral wings were, they could already feel how precious this item was. Otherwise, it wouldn't have shocked everyone to such an extent. They could even hear the cries of the heavenly god swallowing Void's people. Longchen had already begun to ask the Emperor Lord's remnant soul about the origin of this so-called astral wings. Even the Realm Master didn't know much about this item. He had only heard many rumors about it. Of course, one of the reasons for this was that according to the rumors, anyone who obtained this item would definitely hide it extremely well. Perhaps even if they died, it wouldn't be discovered. Another reason was that the Realm Master didn't have any desire to explore this item. When the realm master of the ancient sacred realm reached that realm, he was practically at the peak of a realm. The so-called treasures could no longer move him in the slightest. He couldn't be bothered to search for this item because of some insignificant rumors. However, at this moment, both Long Chen and the realm master were interested in this item. They still had to search for the remaining 7 Chaos Dragon bones. The Chaos Dragon bones were different from the realm master's flesh and blood origin. Every Chaos Dragon bone contained the realm master's most terrifying technique when he was alive. Any member of the Chaos God tribe could use some of this item. If one was as talented as Adept Dao, they could even pry into some of the mysteries within. Once this item fell into the hands of a member of the Chaos God tribe, unless the person who obtained it used it once, they would definitely cover it up flawlessly. After all, this was the chaotic starry sky, not just the territory of the 9 great Chaos God tribes. There were countless stars in the vast starry sky. It was unknown which Chaos God tribe had coincidentally obtained the Chaos Dragon bones and hidden them away. Moreover, there were also places like the Devil Abyss in the starry sky that almost no one dared to set foot in. If the astral wings could really find all the fortunes in the world, then it should be able to find the exact location of the Chaos Dragon bones. Recondense the astral wings? As Long Chen's thoughts spun, everyone gradually understood the meaning of the words of the person on the skeleton. He wanted everyone here to search for all the golden feathers and return them to the skeleton. After everyone's burning excitement and shock passed, they gradually calmed down. The light of reason appeared in their eyes. Everyone wanted to look at the cages below. One after another, square cages were arranged vertically and horizontally. Huge chains and black auras intertwined in every corner of the cages. Green rust covered them, and there were even some places that had cracked open. The one that attacked me just now should be the ghost on the skeleton. Elder Su's voice was filled with lingering fear. If every ghost in this cage had the combat power of this one, forget about recondensing the astral wings. Chapter 1269. The demonic abyss was filled with boundless darkness. There was no land here, and no stars would ever appear above their heads. At this moment, the place where Long Chen and the heavenly god swallowing void god's bloodline was glowing like a lantern. Long Chen had already discovered through the Realm Lord's divine sense that the two-faced ghosts in this cage were not as terrifying as he had imagined. At the very least, they couldn't instantly kill a god emperor like Elder Su. The most fundamental change was that Long Chen could clearly rely on his Emperor Master's divine sense to scan every ghost. Perhaps the combat strength and cultivation of these ghosts have been suppressed by the golden feathers, or perhaps there's some other reason, Long Chen said to Elder Su and the others. Zhu Ziyin looked at the orange skeleton above and muttered, perhaps the astral wings are looking for a suitable owner? After all, this place is too dark. Perhaps these words were a little presumptuous, but everyone couldn't help but ponder for a moment before nodding deeply. It wasn't rare for treasures like the astral wings to possess intelligence. At the very least, the two-faced ghosts on the orange skeleton were most likely being controlled by the astral wing soul. If that was the case, everyone still had a chance. Of course. At this moment, they still had to face the threat of the heavenly god swallowing void god's bloodline. Let me out too. Kong Inshua's voice rang out in Long Chen's mind. After asking the Emperor Lord's remnant soul, Long Chen waved his hand and released Kong Inshua from the Dragon Palace. Not long after entering the demonic abyss, he had sent Kong Inshua back into the Dragon Palace so that he could no longer take care of Kong Inshua. When Kong Inshua's soul appeared, there were actually 3 golden feathers within it. Long Chen couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to avoid the golden feathers entering his body even though he was hiding in the Dragon Palace. Of course. This didn't include the Realm Lord's remnant soul. Perhaps even the astral wings couldn't detect the Realm Lord's existence. After a moment of silence, Kong Henshua asked Long Chen, Kong Henshua's Magatama is still with you, right? If you have this item, I can negotiate with the people of the Heavenly God Devouring Clan. Unless they do not wish to attempt to obtain the astral wings. Just as Kong Hen Shui finished speaking, Kong Hen Luyun's Magatama was already in his hands. Long Chen shook his head with a wry smile as he looked at Goyu. Master's wife, Kong Hen and Luyun have already decided to kill you because of this item. If you continue to use it, this matter will become a matter of the heavenly space god lineage. Kong Hen Shui glared viciously at Long Chen. However, he couldn't help but let out a cold harumph when he recalled what Kong Hen Luyun had said before leaving the ancient devouring heaven god's bloodline. I used to think that Kong Hen Luyun was a decent person, but it seems like he deserved it even without the jade hook, as he spoke. Thus, Kong Hen Shui led Long Chen and the others toward the heavenly god Sky Devouring clan. There were close to 10,000 people from the heavenly god Sky Devouring clan. At this moment, there were still some who wanted to retreat, but there were also some who were slowly approaching the cage. However, before they could leave, Tun Gumo called out to them. He didn't say anything about how they couldn't leave. Instead, he directly said, "You can leave, but the golden feather must stay." Close to 1,000 people didn't plan on participating in this so-called battle for the astral wings. They had truly been frightened by the two-faced ghost that had almost torn Elder Su to shreds. They didn't think that they would be able to survive until the very end. Moreover, even if they obtained the golden feather, it would most likely fall into Tun Gumo's hands in the end. They truly didn't want to sacrifice their lives for this. The 1,000 or so people began to hesitate. Even though they didn't want to fight for the astral wings, they also had many misgivings. On one hand, they were wary of Tun Gumo's space-engulfing medallion. On the other hand, they had no idea how to leave the demonic abyss. At that time, they had clearly seen the 100 people who had mysteriously disappeared. Even now, no one was able to say how they had died. Before they could reply to Tun Gumo, Long Chen and the others gradually appeared in their line of sight. Kong Inshua was also standing in front of Long Chen. This scene caused the Heavenly God clan members to stop what they were doing and look towards Long Chen and the others. They hadn't forgotten their purpose in coming here. They had to capture Kong Inshua and bring him back to the Star Prison. Even if he died, he had to die in the Star Prison. This was what the Heavenly God clan had said. Tun Gumo's gaze landed on Kong Inshua, and his brows instantly furrowed. He hadn't expected Kong Inshua and the others to turn back at this time. However, Long Chen and the others' actions caused those who were about to leave to heave a sigh of relief. At the very least, they didn't have to be afraid of mysteriously disappearing when they turned around. Of course. Long Chen and the others turned around and arrived in front of the Heavenly God clan members. They didn't have too many misgivings. They didn't know about this at all. The Heavenly God clan members had been following them closely, and they didn't dare to turn around. Naturally, they didn't know about the mysterious disappearance of the 100 members of the Heavenly God clan. Tun Gumo seemed to be completely focused on the astral wings at this moment. As soon as he opened his mouth, he gave the order to kill all of them first. If Kong Inshua resists, don't let him off the hook either. The Heavenly God clan members all charged towards Long Chen and the others. Their terrifying auras and killing intent surged towards them like a tidal wave. At this moment, Long Chen saw Kong Inshua and Luyun standing in the sky not too far away. Kong Inshua and Luyun were filled with mockery when they saw the situation they were in. He wanted nothing more than for Long Chen to die right now. That way, his Magatama would choose to return to her clan because of the imprint that Kong Inshua and Tubo had left behind. He didn't care about Kong Inshua's life at all. More accurately, he had never cared about Kong Inshua's life. What he truly wanted was Kong Inshua's daughter, Kong Henqing. The daughter who possessed the bloodline of the ancient sage world lord. However, Kong Inshua's next words almost caused his heart to burn with rage. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Kong Inshua actually caught Kong Inshua and Lu Yun's Magatama in her hand. Then, waves of dense spatial energy began to gather around it. Her gaze fell upon Tun Gumo as she said in a cold voice, "This is Kong Inshua and Lu Yun's Magatama. You should be very clear about my control over space." Tun Gumo's pupils shrank as he stared at Kong Inshua and said in a low voice, You can't be thinking that you can defeat all of us with just a Magatama and a few of you, right? Even though the Realm Lord has taught you how to control space-time, it's already impressive that you can protect yourself with your level 3 or 4 Divine Emperor cultivation. Back in the Star Prison, Longchen had personally witnessed Kong Hen Shue's spatial manipulation ability, which was beyond her current cultivation level. Of course. Chapter 1270. Kong Hen Shue's sudden words caused Zhu Zixua's expression to stiffen. Longchen suddenly came to a realization, and a smile appeared on his face. This was the demonic abyss. Although Kong Hen Shue's spatial abilities far exceeded his current cultivation level, he couldn't send anyone away. However, it was extremely easy to send 1 or 2 people into the chaotic flow of space. If he really did that, no one could be sure where they would end up. Her intentions couldn't be more obvious. She wasn't joking around with Zhu Zixua's life. Instead, she was telling the Heavenly God-devouring clan that if they really wanted to obtain the astral wings, they couldn't attack them first. Otherwise, if anyone brought the golden feather into the chaotic flow of space, the astral wings wouldn't be able to reform. Tun Gumo's brows gradually furrowed. The golden feather should be inextricably linked to the astral wings. He was determined to obtain it, so he definitely wouldn't take any risks. We can ignore you, but you have to stay here. In the end, you have to hand over the golden feather. At that time, I can consider sparing your lives. In Tun Gumo's eyes, Longchen and the others had no other choice but to rely on Kong Hen Shue's power of space. Kong Hen Shue and the others nodded in agreement. On the other hand, Kong Hen Luyun's expression was extremely dark. His Sky Magatama had fallen into Kong Hen Shue's hands, but Kong Hen Shue had no intention of handing it over. In the end, Kong Hen Luyun couldn't help but look at the orange skeleton in the sky. On the other side, Longchen and the others were still interested in the astral wings. If they wanted to stay here, they had to first convince the Heavenly God-devouring clan. After Tun Gumo finished speaking, he led the Heavenly God-devouring clan down to the cages below. Within each of the cages were those terrifying two-faced ghosts. Even the Realm Master wouldn't be able to find out where these things came from. Most likely, they were closely related to the astral wings. Swish! 2 members of the Heavenly God Sky Swallowing clan tried to approach the two-faced ghost within the cage, but their foreheads were directly pierced by the long scarlet tongue from behind. Their divine souls were completely destroyed. Buzz! As soon as the 2 of them died, the 2 golden feathers in each of their bodies swayed and fell into the body of the two-faced ghost that had killed them. Everyone was on high alert as their pupils constricted. The astral wings were a world treasure. It was impossible for the people present to not have any thoughts of seizing it. However, as the number of casualties gradually increased, the people from the Heavenly Gods faction chose to wait and see. This scene made Tun Gumo feel very helpless. The reason why such a thing had happened was because of the sky-devouring token. These people knew that even if they obtained the golden feather, they would definitely be ordered to hand it over. Instead of that, why would they risk their lives for it? Not only that. Everyone present tried to move the golden feather in their bodies, but they found that the golden feather didn't move at all. This meant that the golden feather could not be given to others directly. Could it be that the transfer of the golden feather had to be done at the cost of killing others? At this moment, this question lingered in everyone's mind, unable to be erased. If that was the case, there would be no one they could trust here. Beside Longchen, Elder Su and Kong Inshua raised their eyebrows. They communicated with Longchen via divine sense. Only now did everyone realize that as long as the physical body disappeared, the golden feather could be controlled at will. Longchen immediately stopped Elder Su and Kong Inshua from taking out the golden feather. If the Heavenly Gods faction found out about this, the current situation would be disadvantageous to them. On the other side, Tun Gumo finally made up his mind. He promised to the people of his clan, everyone is a member of the Heavenly Gods faction. Today, as long as we obtain the astral wings, I will not keep it for myself. I will definitely hand it over to the clan. When the time comes, we will divide the rewards equally. Everyone should know the value of this item. We can't let it go just like that." As he spoke, Tungumo took the lead and led the people behind him to charge toward the cages below. Black mist poured out of his mouth like a tide. Saber light condensed in his hands and did not dissipate. He suddenly charged toward the nearest cage. Rumble. The two-faced ghosts within the cages immediately let out ear-piercing screams. Their originally curled fingernails instantly straightened, revealing a strange green light. Crackle. The attacks of the two-faced ghosts actually blocked the attacks of Tungumo and the others with unerring accuracy. Their fingernails directly blocked the long weapons of Tungumo and the others. Everyone's gaze simultaneously turned toward the battle between Tungumo and the others. Even Longchen and the others were no exception. The two-faced ghosts were simply too strange. Even though their cultivation was currently restricted, their battle prowess was still terrifyingly strong. Within the cages, each ghost had around 3 feathers. This meant that they were going to kill them all. Rumble. After several hundred breaths, Tungumo finally chopped off the head of a ghost. Only then did everyone realize. These ghosts only had physical bodies. They did not have souls. Once their bodies lost the ability to move, they would be at the mercy of others. Tungumo and the others successively killed the ghosts in the outermost cages. Then, they loudly called out to their fellow ghosts, "Whoever obtains the most golden feathers is the person with the greatest opportunity. If we obtain the astral wings, it is highly likely that we will be the ones to wield them. What are you waiting for? As long as we obtain the astral wings, our ghosts will soar to the heavens. Why should we be controlled by the god of future?" Tungumo and the other higher-ups behind him seemed to have reached a consensus regarding the astral wings. However, at this moment, Air Scar-Flowing Cloud, who had been silent all this time, opened his mouth and said playfully, "You guys sure have a lot to say. Why don't you just throw away the space-devouring tokens?" Buzz. Air Scar-Flowing Cloud's wings flapped. 2 strange ripples spread out from the center of his wings and then rushed toward the heads of the ghosts. A pitch-black spatial rift appeared before everyone's eyes. His meaning was clear. He wanted Tungumo to hand over the space-devouring token, which was capable of suppressing the other heavenly gods. Air Scar-Flowing Cloud's voice fell. All of the heavenly gods turned their gazes toward Tungumo in unison. If he still insisted on keeping the space-devouring token, it would mean that everything he had said before was nonsense. Tungumo stared deeply at Air Scar-Flowing Cloud. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Tungumo did not choose to hand over the space-devouring token. Instead, he crushed it in his hand. Chapter 1271. Void Scar and Flowing Cloud's words caused Tungumo to destroy the space-devouring token. The soul imprints within the space-devouring token returned to the bodies of the Heavenly God Clan members, and everyone's eyes lit up. The situation started to spiral out of control, and more people charged towards the cage. Longchen and the others also retreated to a corner of the cage. The appearance of the two-faced ghost was truly terrifying, and Qing Xian couldn't help but take a few steps back. Longchen and the others stepped forward and began to try to kill the two-faced ghost. They quickly discovered that the combat strength of these ghost-faced monsters had decreased significantly, and in less than an hour, they had already killed more than 20 of them. The number of golden feathers in their hands gradually increased, and they all decided to hand them over to Longchen. Their speed of slaughter gradually slowed down. As they approached the center of the cage, the two-faced ghost's combat strength became stronger and stronger. In comparison, the Heavenly God Clan members had the advantage of numbers, and their harvest was far greater than Longchen and the others. Tungumo and a few other higher-ups had even gathered a team of close to 2,000 Fifth Order God Emperors. This team had already charged to the center of the cage. Every two-faced ghost in the center of the cage had a total of 5 golden feathers in their bodies. Outside the center of the cage, there were 2 other teams of Heavenly God Devouring Clan members. These two teams clearly had no intention of joining forces with Tungumo and the others. Instead, they deliberately avoided them and fought for the golden wings at the same time. Even the smallest team had around 1,500 members, and as for the others, there were only a few dozen to 100 members left alive. At this moment, the cage had already become the place where the Heavenly God clan members fought for the astral wings. Gradually, people began to discover that as long as their physical bodies were destroyed, their souls would be able to give away the golden feathers. The situation became even more chaotic, and many of the Heavenly God clan's 100-member teams had already begun to fight. They also cared about their relationship with their clansmen, and once they surrendered, they would destroy their physical bodies and hand over the golden feathers. No one dared to provoke Tungumo's team. Their eyes gradually fell on Long Chen and the others. One of the old men narrowed his eyes and said, "Should we think of a way to kill them first? Otherwise, Kong Hen Shui will always be a variable." Tungumo pondered for a moment, then shook his head and replied, "Kong Hen Shui's control over space is extraordinary. We still have Kong Hen Luyun's Jade Magatama, so we can't act rashly. Moreover, how many golden feathers can they get? When the time comes, if they are sensible, they will naturally hand it over." Everyone could tell. Tungumo was still a little worried that Kong Hen Shui would ruin his chances of obtaining the astral wings. However, what Kong Hen Shui said made sense. Although Long Chen and the others' cultivation and battle prowess were not bad, their numbers were too few. In this battle for the astral wings, they could not play any key role. No matter what, the astral wings would fall into the hands of the Heavenly God Devouring clan. It was just a matter of which team it would fall into. The space here is strange and unpredictable. Kong Hen Shui will definitely not be able to open it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used the Jade Magatama to threaten us. The few of you, think of a way to set up a formation to stabilize the space here. Tungumo transmitted a message to the others. The people behind him continued to attempt to kill the two-faced ghosts. At the same time, they would sneak into the other cages from time to time. At this time, Long Chen and the others were being held back by several two-faced ghosts. Although these ghosts were trapped in their cages, their combat prowess did not decrease in the slightest. At this time, most of the two-faced ghosts in the outer cages had already been killed. The speed at which they obtained the golden feathers had also slowed down. Long Chen and the others were the best example. The four ghosts in front of them were all sixth-order God Emperors. With their strange attacks, Zhu Zizhua and the others could feel the pressure mounting. Rumble. While everyone was busy with their own tasks, a bloody scene that sent chills down their spines appeared in front of them. Under everyone's watchful eyes, over 100 Heavenly God Emperors from the Heavenly God Devouring clan had their foreheads pierced through by a tongue. Among these 100 Heavenly God Devouring clan members, the strongest had already reached the peak of the 5th Order God Emperor realm. The weakest was at the mid-4th Order God Emperor realm. More than 100 people had died in an instant. Not to mention their divine souls, they didn't even have the chance to scream. Everyone's body stiffened. Some of them had even lost their lives due to a momentary lapse in concentration. Everyone's gaze landed on the scarlet tongue that had pierced through the Heavenly God Devouring clan members' foreheads. As they looked down, they discovered that the tongue had come from the center of the cages. It was a very ordinary two-faced ghost. Thus, no one had paid much attention to it. Hiss. Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The Heavenly God Devouring clan's members, which numbered less than 1,000, began to form an alliance. Creak, creak, ear-piercing sounds of metal scraping against metal rang out. The black chi above the cages gradually disappeared into the bottom of the metal pillars. Roar, roar, roar. The moment the black chi disappeared, the two-faced ghosts' roars reverberated through the air. Not only that, their battle prowess rose at a speed visible to the naked eye. They were closing in on the person who had killed Old Su. Long Chen's expression changed, and he hurriedly shouted, "Retreat immediately. Don't fight them head-on." When everyone heard Long Chen's words, they immediately gave up on the battle and retreated. Longchen did the same. At the same time, the Emperor Lord's remnant soul's voice sounded in Longchen's mind. The source of these ghosts' power is the golden feathers, and that cage is the thing that suppresses their power. These ghosts are too powerful. If this cage releases them, I'm afraid not many people will be able to survive. Longchen nodded and chose to continue observing the situation. He had to see what level the cultivation of these ghost-faced creatures could reach. While everyone was pondering, Kong Hen Luyan slowly approached them. His gaze landed on Kong Hen Shui, and he bowed. "An Hen Shui, please return the Sky Magatama to me. If we work together, we have a 50% chance of leaving this place. This so-called trial of the astral wings is definitely not as simple as it seems. If this continues, we'll die here sooner or later." Kong Hen Luyan still treated Kong Hen Shui like an elder, but his goal was extremely obvious. Kong Hen Shui looked at Kong Hen Luyan and snorted coldly. "That day outside the Star Prison, I saw with my own eyes when you led 10,000 of our clan members to their deaths. Let's forget about the matter between you and Qing. I'll keep the Sky Magatama for you." Chapter 1272. All of a sudden, Kong Hen Luyan rose into the air and lunged at Kong Hen Shui's remaining divine soul. Kong Hen Shui's expression changed drastically. She was only a third-order god emperor. However, her control over time and space was far superior to her peers. Now that she was in the Devil Abyss, her control over time and space was greatly restricted. She was completely helpless against Void Hen Luyan, who was a sixth-order god emperor. If this attack landed, she would die instantly. At this moment, Void Scar and Flowing Cloud were desperate to snatch back the Space Magatama. Zhu Zizhua was the closest to Kong Hen Shui. He dashed forward, and his destructive energy surged out like a tidal wave. However, Void Hen Luyan's wings flapped, and his attack changed. He appeared behind Zhu Zizhua. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the halberd in Longchen's hand flew out, and it stopped in front of Kong Hen Shui. Boom boom boom. Void Hen Luyan's attack stopped as though it had hit a wall. He retreated as fast as he could, and his face was incomparably pale. At the same time, he looked at Longchen with a serious expression. Longchen was only a fourth-order god emperor. However, he was able to stop his attack with just his halberd. It was unbelievable. Longchen's face was as gloomy as water. He slowly walked forward and grabbed the halberd in front of Kong Hen Shui. His voice was filled with killing intent. "You're courting death." Longchen wasn't the only one who had said those words. It was an order directly given by the World Lord to Longchen as his master. Void Hen Luyan sneered when he heard Longchen's words. He sneered, "With just you? If it weren't for the fact that we're in the Devil Abyss, even 10 of you wouldn't be a match for me. Do you really think that a fourth-order god emperor is invincible just because you managed to block my attack with your weapon? Kong Hen Shui, I'll say it one more time. Hand the Space Magatama over to me." Right now, Void Hen Luyan only wanted to retrieve the Space Magatama. He had taken the risk to enter the Devil Abyss to obtain the Space Magatama. Who would have thought that something like this would happen? Now that the two-faced ghost's cultivation had increased once again, if he didn't take back the Space Magatama, he would have no chance of leaving the demonic abyss. Hen Snow glanced at Hen Luyan. The Hen Snow's right hand was wrapped in Hen Luyan's spatial energy as he sent the Hen Magatama into the center of the cage. When everyone finally reacted, she looked at Streak and Flowing Cloud and said, "If you want this item, then take it." Void Scar and Flowing Cloud's bodies trembled with rage as they stared at the 100 heavenly space-engulfing gods that had just been slain. He looked at Longchen and the others and wished he could kill them immediately. However, there were still a few people behind Longchen and Kong Hen Shui. It would be difficult for him to kill them alone. His first priority was to find a way to retrieve the Sky Magatama. He stared vigilantly at Longchen and the others before slowly retreating towards the heavenly god Sky-devouring clan. The heavenly Sky-devouring god's lineage was no longer as relaxed as it had been in the beginning. There were people giving up their names at almost every moment. If it weren't for the fact that the two-faced ghost was unable to escape from the cage, they probably wouldn't have any chance of victory. Once again, Henluyun arrived beside Tungumo. No one knew what Henluyun and Tungumo were talking about. However, the two of them were standing side by side after a short moment. Elder Su and the others watched as Henluyun and Tungumo joined forces. What should we do now? We definitely won't be able to fight against the heavenly god sky-devouring clan head-on. Now that Henluyun has joined forces with Tungumo, I'm afraid that once the matter of the golden feather is over, we'll become their prey. Zhu Zizhua stood in front of his grandson and said, "Why don't we leave the golden feather here and continue to search for a way to leave the demonic abyss?" Even Kong Henshui agreed to this suggestion. If it weren't for the fact that the strength of the ghosts within the cage had increased explosively, they probably would have already attacked Long Chen and the others. Zhu Zizhua and the others believed that if they took out the golden feather, they would only be giving up on their physical bodies. If they continued to stay here, their lives would be in danger. Even Kong Henshui nodded in agreement to this suggestion. However, Long Chen shook his head and said, "Let's just wait here. Perhaps we'll be able to easily obtain the astral wings." Everyone was stunned upon hearing this. They didn't know why Long Chen was so confident. It was clear who the Void Scar Wings would end up in. The heavenly god sky-devouring clan had over 10,000 members. Henluyun and Long Chen had no chance of obtaining the golden feather. Once the cage was taken care of, Long Chen and the others would become the heavenly god sky-devouring clan's prey as long as they didn't leave the demonic abyss. Qing Xian hadn't said anything this entire time. However, when he saw how confident Long Chen was, he said, "The demonic abyss isn't just a mysterious place. If we travel with our divine sense, it will be far more dangerous than this place." Everyone fell silent. Qing Xian's words weren't without reason. They heaved a long sigh and finally looked toward Long Chen. They placed all their hopes on Long Chen. If Long Chen could truly use the demonic star dragon bone's power to slaughter an entire primal chaos divine tribe once more, perhaps they would still have a chance today. What they didn't know was that after Long Chen used the demonic star dragon bone's power, his body had already begun to change even though he seemed to have recovered very quickly. This change was somewhat similar to the Tao of Doom. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul had sealed away the demonic star dragon bone's power. If Long Chen hadn't been in a life-or-death situation, the Emperor Lord's remnant soul probably wouldn't have allowed him to use such a terrifying power again. Meanwhile, the heaven-changing dragon bone was still in the process of absorbing energy. Right now, it couldn't activate the teleportation formation within it at all. In reality, Long Chen had no intention of using the primal chaos dragon bone. Both he and the Emperor Lord's remnant soul had gradually realized something extremely interesting. Time ticked by. Thousands of people from the heavenly god's heavenly swallow space clan had their souls destroyed. Only a little more than 1,000 people had survived and only lost their physical bodies. At this very moment, there was only one cage left beneath their feet. The two-faced ghost within it had several hundred golden feathers inside its body. Everyone from the heavenly god's heavenly swallow space clan felt both at ease and fearful of this final ghost. Buzz buzz buzz. As everyone gradually approached, the final cage actually gradually opened. This final two-faced ghost scuttled out like a phantom. It roared and charged into the crowd of heavenly god's heavenly swallow space clan members. "Kill it for me." Tungumo led the remaining clansmen and charged toward this final two-faced ghost. For a moment, black light filled the sky. Roars rang out incessantly. Swathes of god emperors were killed along with their souls. When Long Chen saw this, the smile at the corner of his mouth became wider and wider. Chapter 1273. The orange skeleton hovered in the air above everyone's heads, floating in the darkness of the demonic abyss like a lighthouse. At the center of this lighthouse stood a two-faced ghost. Long Chen's gaze fell upon this ghost. In a short hour, under Tungumo's lead, the heavenly sky-swallowing god's bloodline had slaughtered all of the two-faced ghosts. Their numbers had been reduced to less than 1,000, and over 100 of them were only left with their divine sense. These 1,000 or so members of the Bu tribe had already been separated from their respective teams. Everyone's expressions were grim. The power of these two-faced ghosts was simply too terrifying, especially the last one that had just been killed. If it weren't for the fact that Tungumo and Kong Han Luyan had joined forces, even more of them would have died. The heavenly sky-swallowing gods' bloodline's despondent mood returned to their faces when they saw the glowing golden feathers in Tungumo's hands. They treated all of this as a test. Otherwise, why would these two-faced ghosts be weakened? They were about to pass this trial and obtain the astral wings. Those who still had physical bodies were in no hurry to self-destruct. Under Tungumo's lead, their gazes gradually fell upon Long Chen and the others. As long as they could obtain the golden feathers in Long Chen's hands, everything would come to an end. Tungumo led the final 1,000 or so members toward Long Chen. His face was filled with mockery and killing intent. Zhu Zizhua and the others couldn't help but slowly retreat with divine light emanating from their bodies. Qing Xian and Kong Han Shui also urged Long Chen to find an opportunity to escape. Whoosh! Before they could do anything, streaks of light flashed past them from tens of thousands of meters away. Only now did Kong Han Shui and the others realize that the heavenly sky-swallowing god's bloodline had already prepared a backup plan. This was why they were the last to be dealt with. Kong Han Luyan stood behind Tungumo and looked at Long Chen and Kong Han Shui with a mocking expression on his face. Do you think that I won't be able to obtain the Sky Magatama just because you threw it into the cage? Do you really think that I can't see what you left on it? Bang! As Streak Wind and Flowing Cloud spoke, the Sky Magatama in his right hand instantly squeezed out streams of space power, causing ripples to spread out in all directions. Kong Han Shui's face turned ashen. He snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. This made Air Scar and Flowing Cloud feel even more pleased with themselves. They slowly fused the jade hook into their glabella as they stared at Long Chen and said, "It looks like you're going to die before me." The reason why Streak Wind and Flowing Cloud were able to reach a deal with Tungumo was because he did not have to give up much. He had only promised Tungumo that he would use a secret technique to extract Kong Han Shui's Sky Magatama and hand it over to Tungumo. Long Chen met Air Scar and Flowing Cloud's gaze. The two of them had different expressions. When their eyes met, Air Scar and Flowing Cloud saw the expression in Long Chen's eyes and the faint smile on his lips, and their hearts couldn't help but thump. An extremely uneasy feeling gradually rose in his heart. Before he could move, Long Chen stared at him and said, "I don't think I'll die before you," as soon as he finished speaking. Long Chen's right hand made a grabbing motion toward Air Scar and Flowing Cloud, as if he was controlling something. Air Scar and Flowing Cloud's pupils contracted. An unprecedented expression of shock and horror appeared on his face as he frantically reached toward his glabella. This sudden movement caused Tungumo and the other heavenly god sky-swallowing god to frown. They didn't know why Air Scar and Flowing Cloud was acting so strangely. Bam! Under the gazes of over 1,000 people, Air Scar and Flowing Cloud's head suddenly exploded as Long Chen's right hand made a grabbing motion. Tungumo and the others who were near Air Scar and Flowing Cloud instantly retreated as they stared at the scene before them in shock. What on earth had Long Chen done? Why had Air Scar and Flowing Cloud died right before their eyes? Even Elder Su and the others were stunned. They couldn't understand what was going on. Even though Long Chen was the successor of the Realm Lord, his strength was still lacking. How could he have killed Air Scar and Flowing Cloud from such a long distance away? They didn't even see Air Scar and Flowing Cloud's divine sense escape from his body. However, Kong Han Shui's divine sense turned around to look at Long Chen. He couldn't help but mutter, You left something in his Sky Magatama as well?" Long Chen didn't deny his words. He nodded slightly and said, "I didn't leave anything behind. I only planted a strand of divine sense." As soon as he said this, Kong Han Shui instantly understood. Long Chen had planted the divine sense of the God Emperor's remnant soul. If that wasn't the case, Air Scar and Flowing Cloud wouldn't have failed to detect it. Moreover, they wouldn't have had their divine sense completely shattered. After Long Chen hid her in the Dragon Palace and brought her out of the Star Prison, she already knew about the existence of the God Emperor's remnant soul. Naturally, she had guessed all of this. Tun Gumo and the others stared at Long Chen for a while before regaining their composure. They reached out their hands and destroyed Airscar and Flowing Cloud's body before retrieving the golden feather. If you destroy your own body and follow me back to the ancient devouring star, you might still have a chance to live, Tun Gumo said. Thousands of people had already surrounded Long Chen. A powerful aura exuded from the bodies of these people. One had to admit, even though they had lost 7,000 to 8,000 people in the battle with the two-faced ghost creatures, the ones who survived were all elites. Every single one of them was at the 6th level of the 5th Order God Emperor realm. Their combat strength was definitely one of the best among their peers. Old Su and the others' faces were ashen. However, they were still prepared to fight at any moment. Before they could make a move, Long Chen suddenly took a step forward and said, "Since you haven't made a move yet, it seems like you're still afraid that Kong Hen Shui will send the golden feather into the chaotic space. I can give you all the golden feather, but I want one more thing from you." Tun Gumo's expression was extremely ugly. He didn't know why. When he saw the rare prodigies of the heavenly space god's bloodline die in Long Chen's hands, a sense of dread rose in his heart for Long Chen. This feeling made him feel that Long Chen was extremely dangerous. "What is it?" "The Star-Tide Ancient Boat." "The Star-Tide Ancient Boat?" Tun Gumo had never thought that Long Chen would ask him for the Star-Tide Ancient Boat at a time like this. Could it be that Long Chen thought that as long as he used the ancient Star-Tide Boat, he would be able to escape their encirclement and leave the demonic abyss? If they weren't in the Devil Abyss, Long Chen might be able to escape with the Star-Tide Ancient Boat. Tun Gumo knew very well that the Star-Tide Ancient Boat couldn't move at all. There was no way it could bring them out of the Devil Abyss. At least, that was what Tun Gumo thought. Not only that, he didn't lie to the other heavenly space-devouring gods about one thing. He was prepared to pay a price to leave the Devil Abyss. Chapter 1274. Tun Gumo had no intention of handing over the ancient Star-Tide Boat. However, Long Chen did not give him much time to think. He grabbed the golden feather and Old Su's soul with his right hand. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Long Chen did something unbelievable. The golden feather disappeared without a trace in his hand. At the same time, the other golden feathers in his body disappeared as well. This scene caused Tun Gumo's expression to darken to the extreme. "Where is the golden feather? Why can't I even sense its aura?" Everyone was confused. Only Kong Hen Shui knew that these feathers were probably kept in the Dragon Palace by Long Chen. Long Chen had no intention of explaining. He just stared at Tun Gumo. Tun Gumo could not help but have thousands of thoughts in his mind. The astral wings were right in front of him. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he was that everything would be for naught. "I'll give you the ancient Star-Tide Boat. Hand over the golden feather." Tun Gumo gritted his teeth and decided to hand over the ancient Star-Tide Boat for now. Although he felt that something was wrong, he could not figure out why Long Chen wanted the boat. When the boat was in his hand, Tun Gumo and the rest of the people had already surrounded Long Chen. Seeing this, Old Su and the others felt helpless. Zhu Zizhua said to Long Chen in a low voice, "It's useless even if you want the ancient Star-Tide Boat. Once we hand over the golden feather, I'm afraid he'll still kill us. Do you think the heavenly god-swallowing clan will let us go and wait for us to return the golden feather?" Zhu Zizhua and Old Su both smiled bitterly. Long Chen did not answer. Instead, he slowly walked in front of everyone and said, "I'll help you retrieve the golden feather." The divine light in his right hand intertwined and cut into everyone's bodies. He then extracted the illusory golden feather from their souls. Seeing this, Tun Gumo and the others felt even more uneasy. Long Chen seemed to have an extraordinary power. Aside from destroying their physical bodies, there was no way to remove the golden feathers from their bodies. However, he was able to do so easily. It was truly inconceivable. Swoosh! Swoosh! Longchen waved his right hand and the golden feather flew towards Tungumo. Tungumo immediately put away the golden feather, and then his body couldn't help but tremble. He caught the golden feathers one by one and surveyed his surroundings. He knew that all of the feathers had fallen into the hands of the ancient devouring heavenly god's bloodline. Kill them all. Leave only Kong Henshu alive. His eyes gradually turned towards Longchen, and they turned cold. Just as everyone was about to move, Longchen suddenly laughed. Bang! Longchen's body glowed brightly, and the halberd in his hand suddenly struck out violently. His attack had actually shattered the ancient ship that Tungumo had just given him. Tungumo and the others felt that Longchen's actions were extremely strange. He had exchanged the golden feathers for the ancient ship, so why did he want to destroy it? Longchen stared at Tungumo and laughed. Do you really think that you can obtain the astral wings by obtaining all of these golden feathers? Do you still remember the ghost that attacked you and us? Tungumo didn't know what Longchen meant, but for some reason, he gradually calmed down from his previous excitement. His eyes looked towards the two-faced ghost that stood in the middle of the orange skeleton in the sky. This was the only two-faced ghost that wasn't trapped in a cage. It must have been the one that had attacked Tungumo and Elder Su back then. He didn't attack anyone. He only wanted the ancient ship. As Longchen spoke, he actually walked towards the two-faced ghost and the orange skeleton in the sky. At this moment, Elder Su also came to a realization. He finally understood why he was the only one that had been attacked back then. Tungumo's gaze was fixed on the orange skeleton. He thought back to when everyone had gone around it and he was the only one that had been attacked. At this moment, he believed that Longchen wasn't lying. If that was the case, the ancient ship was the key to everything. He looked at the golden feathers in his hand and then looked at the two-faced ghost in the middle of the orange skeleton. He lost his voice and said, He is the soul of the astral wings. He wants the ancient ship to leave this place. Longchen was now less than 10 meters away from the orange skeleton. He didn't even turn his head as he continued to reply. Not only that, he also used these golden feathers to get rid of many of his enemies. The golden feathers in the cage were all done on purpose to suppress the ghost's power. He wants to use you or me to come into contact with the ancient ship and leave this place. Longchen paused and smiled at the two-faced ghost standing in the middle of the orange skeleton. Do you think my guess is correct? More than 1,000 pairs of eyes looked at the two-faced ghost in the middle of the orange skeleton. The faces of the sky-swallowing god's people were as cold as ice. The orange skeleton had scattered the golden feathers at the beginning and told everyone the rules. Now that they thought about it, Longchen's words weren't without reason. If that was the case, then this thing had killed nearly 10,000 of them. The two-faced ghost in the middle of the orange skeleton suddenly twisted its long neck and spoke in human language. Your guess is not far from the truth. In fact, when I attacked the two of them, I didn't have control of this ghost. Otherwise, I wouldn't have almost destroyed the ancient ship. When everyone heard his words, their hearts gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. Now it seemed that they had been played by a soul. Tungumo looked at the golden feathers in his hand. He couldn't accept the reality in front of him. He shouted, if that's the case, although there are very few people who have entered this place, it's not like there aren't any. How can you not get a ship to leave this place? The two-faced ghost pointed at the cage below and lay directly on top of the orange skeleton. The two giant wings seemed to have become wings on his back. He snorted coldly, it's all because of the other ghosts. These guys also want to leave this place, but they're a bunch of brainless things. The ancient ship can only come here for a short period of time and they've basically destroyed it. So, I have to say, you really are my lucky star. It's really rare for 10,000 people to enter at once. Tungumo's face turned ashen when he heard the two-faced ghost's mocking words. Now it seemed that the soul had seen them enter, which was why it used the cage and feathers to suppress these ghosts. The ghost that had taken over the artifact soul seemed to have lost interest in Tungumo. His gaze gradually landed on Longchen. Then, he revealed a smile and said, what do you think now? Now, all that's left is your last star-eyed ancient boat. Chapter 1275. The originally mysterious demonic abyss of the Star Ocean became even more silent. Everyone's attention was focused on Long Chen and the ghost on top of the orange skeleton. This two-faced ghost possessed by the artifact spirit had a bone-chilling smile on its face. Its messy and terrifying hair hung in the air below its feet. A scarlet tongue was like a venomous snake waiting to strike. Qing Xian, Jian San, and the others all had faint traces of sweat on their foreheads. If this two-faced ghost really was the artifact spirit of the astral wings, then it was easy to imagine how powerful it was. Otherwise, the two-faced ghost wouldn't have been suppressed here. While everyone was silent, Tun Gumo's chest rose and fell violently. At this moment, he wanted nothing more than to tear his body apart and take a look at the golden feather. In the entire chaotic Star Ocean, the astral wings had always been a baseless legend. When he received the news, he hesitated for a long time. Until one day, he accidentally discovered that the patterns on the ancient ship were similar to the ones he knew. Thus, he decided to give it a try. Because of this, he almost lost his life. Now that he finally had the chance, he brought 10,000 divine emperors with him. However, in the end, they were all dead. Everything seemed to be getting further and further away from him. The 10,000 divine emperors he led had become the sacrifice of the artifact spirit. At the center of the orange skeleton, the two-faced ghost's terrifying smile gradually disappeared. It said to Long Chen, "How would I dare to kill you? You've already destroyed one of the ancient ships. Although these ghosts are all dead, who knows how long we'll have to wait for the next ship to arrive. Tell me what you want." Long Chen narrowed his eyes. The smile on his face became even wider. "What I want is naturally the astral wings. Deal." This simple conversation caused Kong Inshui and the others to tremble uncontrollably. They stared at Long Chen and Qing Xian as if their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. The astral wings. Were they going to take the astral wings just like that? On the other hand, the members of the heavenly god Sky-Swallowing clan were brimming with murderous intent as they glared at Long Chen and Jian Wushuang. None of them could take this lying down. Puchi! Tun Gumo spat out several mouthfuls of blood, and his entire body was enveloped by the black mist. "Star-eyed ancient ark, why didn't you say so earlier if it's so simple?" Tun Gumo's voice was filled with indignation and anger. "Even without the ancient ship, I can still leave this place." His angry roar attracted the attention of the artifact spirit. His unwilling words were clearly trying to tell the artifact spirit that there was another option. It could also be said that he was making a final struggle. The two-faced ghost that was possessed by the weapon spirit shifted its gaze from Long Chen to Tun Gumo. It shook its head and muttered, "Both of you have the ancient ship, and you have 10,000 god emperors with you. You are indeed my first target. You killed all of these ghosts, and I was even planning to give you the item. After all, I thought it would be easier to kill you. However, you handed over the ancient ship. I'm different from you. I can only leave with the ancient ship." The artifact spirit's words sounded like a joke, but they caused Tun Gumo's hair to stand on end. After a brief moment of unease, Tun Gumo immediately calmed down and said in a cold voice, "Are you saying that killing me is harder than killing him?" The artifact spirit took a deep look at the calm Long Chen, and finally nodded with a bitter smile. In reality, no one noticed one thing. That was the distribution of the golden feathers. The distribution of the golden feathers represented the power of each person's treasures. It was even directly related to the number of trump cards they had. Long Chen's power far exceeded that of anyone present. This was enough to prove something. He definitely couldn't be judged based on his cultivation on the surface. The artifact spirit seemed to be too lazy to say anything more to Tun Gumo. It just slowly walked to Long Chen's side. He held his hands flat and stretched his body. Every pore on his body seemed to be blooming with divine light. At this moment, his entire body emitted an aura that was completely different from before. This kind of aura was filled with a feeling of relaxation and joy. Endless brilliance and an almost tangible auspicious aura instantly fell on the orange skeleton behind Long Chen. At the same time, the golden feathers on Tungumo and the others' bodies actually transformed. No matter how they tried to stop it, it was useless. None of this could be stopped. The hands of the sky-swallowing gods people suddenly froze in the air. They watched as the orange skeleton in the sky gradually transformed into flesh and blood. The orange light gradually faded and was replaced by bursts of bloody light. Then, golden feathers began to form on the skeleton from all directions. In a short 100 breaths, the empty and pitch-black sky was shrouded in golden brilliance. At the center of the brilliance was a pair of golden wings. This pair of wings was like two scorching suns. There seemed to be a raging golden flame on it. Especially when the golden wings rippled, it seemed to contain the aura of jewels. It made one feel as if their mind was captivated. Under the aura of jewels and the golden wings, there were endless strange patterns. These patterns were obscure and difficult to understand, but they were like the shapes of rare treasures. There was a long spear like a dragon, a sword cutting through the sky, and a bell and cauldron riding the clouds. Every pattern seemed to come alive. Accompanied by the aura of jewels and jewels, they flowed on the wings. Was this the legendary astral wings that could find all the rare treasures in the world? At this moment, no matter how good the minds of the people present were, they could only feel their minds being captivated. Even an idiot could see that the treasure-shaped patterns on the wings were a fortune that was hard to come by in the world. Let's go. I hope you won't disappoint me. Long Chen waved his hand and took out the ancient star-dyed boat that he had obtained from Elder Su. Long Chen wrapped the boat with his divine sense and took the lead to step on it. Elder Su and the others quickly followed behind Long Chen. They looked at Tungumo and the thousands of people vigilantly. Tungumo and the thousands of people did not dare to move. They could only watch as the astral wings gradually landed on the ancient star-dyed boat and turned into a human form. A rare treasure that could turn into a human form. Under everyone's gaze, Long Chen and the others sat on the uncontrollable ancient star-dyed boat and continued to move deeper into the demonic abyss. No one knew if they would sail out of the demonic abyss or continue to stay in it. No one knew when the ancient star-dyed boat would stop. Tungumo looked at this scene and gritted his teeth. According to his understanding, the ancient star-dyed boat should not be able to be used in this place. Let's go. I will take you away from here. I must kill this person. Tungumo waved his right hand and a pitch-black hole appeared in the demonic abyss. Once we return to the clan, we must not let the astral wings remain in his hands even if we have to use all our strength. The thousands of people from the sky-swallowing god's bloodline saw Tungumo's move and their expressions changed. Chapter 1276. Long Chen and the others boarded the star-tied ancient boat once again. The ancient boat was riddled with holes due to the sharp claws. However, it was still heading straight into the depths of the devil abyss. On the ancient boat, Long Chen and the others remained silent. Kong Inxue and Jian Shan stood behind Long Chen. They looked at the person formed by the astral wings in front of them and remained vigilant. They did not dare to let down their guard. They had witnessed the strength of this thing with their own eyes. Elder Su and Tungumo had almost died in its hands. Xingimo stood at the bow of the boat with his back facing them. He did not say a word. Long Chen's right hand remained on the boat. Even an idiot could tell that this was a warning to Xingimo. If he attacked, the boat would be destroyed immediately. The silence was unsettling. After a while, Qing Xian, Jian Shan, and the others realized that Long Chen had closed his eyes. He seemed very calm. He was not afraid that Xingimo would attack at all. However, everyone could not help but break out in cold sweat. Long Chen had become their backbone. Long Chen's closed-door cultivation made them less confident. That's enough. You don't have to do this. I know he's in closed-door cultivation. Xingimo did not even turn his head. There's a shocking secret treasure in his body that's fusing with his body. This item seems to be increasing his strength rapidly. Jian Shisan and the others were slightly stunned. They immediately guessed what Long Chen was doing. He was definitely fusing with the Etian Dragon Bone. He had obtained this item from Adeo and had not had the time to fuse with it. Zhu Zizhua could not help but smile bitterly. They already knew that Long Chen's cultivation had increased tremendously after fusing with the Chaos Dragon Bone. However, he actually dared to fuse with this item in the Devil Abyss. They did not know what to say. A day passed in the blink of an eye. Compared to Long Chen's indifference and Xing Mo's indifference, Zhu Zizhua, Elder Su, and even Kong Inxue could not hold themselves back anymore. Kong Inshua's soul asked Xing Mo, "When will this ancient boat take us out of the Devil Abyss?" Xing Mo turned around and looked at Kong Inxue. His eyes were golden. Kong Inxue could not help but stop breathing. "Right now, I am not the one controlling the Star-Tide ancient ship. He is the one who is continuously pouring energy into it to activate the power of the Tao pattern." Star Demon muttered as he pointed at Long Chen, who had his eyes closed. Hearing this, Kong Henshua was stunned. Long Chen was unable to answer the question in her heart, but the Star Demon seemed to be very interested. He continued, "The Star-Tide ancient arc itself contains the method to leave the demonic abyss of the Star Sea, and it seems that he has already seen through its secrets." Pa. Before Kong Inxue and the others could celebrate, they saw Xing Mo's body glowing with a golden light. A pair of huge golden wings. The patterns on the wings were extremely lifelike. Just looking at the patterns on the wings was enough to make everyone tremble in fear. There's a treasure 10,000 miles ahead. Xing Mo's wings, which were half the size of a human, seemed to have come alive. They did not say a word. However, they recalled the legendary power of the astral wings. It seemed like the astral wings lived up to its name. As expected. After traveling for 10,000 miles, they saw a ray of light floating in the abyss. Everyone was waiting for Xing Mo to make a move. Xing Mo could not help but laugh when he saw everyone's reaction. "My innate talent is to find items of creation. I really don't know how to do it, however, I'll give you a gift today." After Xing Mo finished speaking, he had already dashed out. His entire body seemed to be burning with a blinding light. He flapped his wings and charged towards the ray of light. When the strange roar in the abyss stopped, Xing Mo returned to the ship with his fan. His eyes glanced at Long Chen imperceptibly, and then he frowned. Long Chen had been in seclusion all this time. None of this had anything to do with him. Xing Mo saw that everyone was still on guard. He waved his fan and threw it to the center of the ship. Kong Inxue was fine. Zhu Zizhua and Elder Su stared at the fan as if they were obsessed. However, they did not dare to pick it up. Astral Wings was not easy to deal with. Tun Gumo's army was the best example. Almost 10,000 godly emperors were killed by Xing Mo without shedding a drop of blood. Everyone was still silent. However, in the next 8 to 9 days, 2 more strange treasures appeared in the center of the ship. On this day, Long Chen finally opened his eyes. His cultivation had already reached the 5th Order God Emperor realm. He looked at the 3 items in the center of the ship and grabbed them with his right hand. His left hand never left the ship. The Star-Tide ancient ship is starting to pick up speed. It's no longer changing its direction. We should be leaving the Devil Abyss soon. Everyone couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. For the past few days, they had been on tenterhooks. It wasn't just because Xing Mo was standing in front of the ship. It was also because the Star-Tide ancient ship was heading towards the depths of the Devil Abyss. If they guessed correctly, they were almost at the center of the Devil Abyss. When Astral Wings saw that Long Chen had finally opened his mouth, he said, "At most, we'll need 3 more days." Long Chen looked at the back of the starry demon treasured wing standing in front of the boat and couldn't help but sneer. When this smile entered the eyes of Sword 13 and Qing Xian, it instantly caused their minds to tense up, and they hurriedly notified Elder Su and the others with their divine perception. This sneer meant that there was definitely something wrong with astral wings. The ancient ship's speed was getting faster and faster. It had returned to its original speed, and it was even faster than before. 3 days were about to pass. Qing Xian couldn't help but shout, "Look, there's a flash of light in the distance. That must be the exit." Everyone was extremely excited. When the star-tide ancient ship appeared in the light, everyone realized that the Devil Abyss was actually a huge crack in space. This crack was filled with starlight, which was why Qing Xian could see the light. This was also the place where the star-tide ancient ship was about to enter. At this moment, Astral Wing's pupils shrank, and he couldn't help but reveal a look of excitement. He was finally going to leave the Devil Abyss on the star-tide ancient ship. At the same time, outside the Devil Abyss, thousands of heavenly gods, sky-swallowing gods' bloodline were already prepared. Chapter 1277. Perhaps it was a coincidence, perhaps Tungumo had predicted this, or perhaps it was due to some other reason. When the spatial tear appeared, the star-tide ancient boat appeared right in front of Tungumo and the others. When Tungumo and the others saw Longchen and the others appear on the star-tide ancient boat, black light erupted from their bodies, and terrifying auras shot into the sky. The auras of the 5th and 6th Order God Emperors caused the entire space to tremble. The star-tide ancient boat was still moving at an extremely fast speed, but the God Emperors blocked their path. They were already prepared to face the star-tide ancient boat head-on. Creak, under everyone's watchful eyes, no one would have thought that the star-tide ancient ship would come to a sudden stop right after it left the demonic abyss. The God Emperors from the heavenly devouring God's bloodline only froze for a split second before they surrounded Longchen and the others. The person formed by the astral wings was still standing at the bow of the boat. The smile on his face grew wider and wider, and a hint of playfulness appeared on his face. Boom! A series of muffled sounds entered everyone's ears. The entire star-tide ancient boat began to crumble under his feet, and it turned into dust. Kong Hinshui and the others stood behind Longchen as they stared at the astral wings and the other members of the heavenly devouring God's bloodline cautiously. Their hearts sank to the bottom of the abyss. In this situation, Kong Hinshui would probably have to fight to find an opportunity to use the power of space to survive. Everyone thought that the star-tide ancient boat had been stopped by Shingimo Tungumo, and the others looked at each other, and they couldn't help but feel suspicious. The astral wing's actions made them realize that he hadn't signed any contract with Longchen, and he didn't recognize Longchen as his master. Otherwise, why would he return to the star-tide ancient boat and cut off Longchen and the others' escape route? While the members of the heavenly devouring God's bloodline were deep in thought, the person formed by the astral wings suddenly turned around and stared at Longchen with a smile. "I'm really curious. What kind of person are you? Why did you stop the boat yourself? You used the boat to threaten me to save everyone's lives. You don't look like a fool." When everyone heard the astral wings' words, their faces paled. Kong Hinshui and the others couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Chills ran down their spines as their minds buzzed. Their lives had been a bargaining chip for Long and the astral wingses. Was this the reason why Longchen hadn't asked for the star demon treasured wings to recognize him as its master? The heavenly devouring God's bloodline didn't the heavenly devouring God's bloodline heavenly devouring God's bloodline. This shocked Tungumo and the others. Their faces gradually darkened. Longchen stared at the person formed by the astral wings and suddenly said, "If you want to know what kind of person I am, you can try. After all, this place is no longer the demonic abyss of the stellar ocean." The astral wing's pupils shrank. He laughed and shook his head as he slowly backed away. Although he didn't want to acknowledge Longchen as his master, what he said in front of the orange light skeleton wasn't all lies. At least, his fear of Longchen was real. The golden feathers on Longchen's body were several times more than the others. This was enough to prove that he was different from ordinary people. The astral wings believed in his instincts. He didn't want to attack Longchen directly. Instead, he said to Tungumo and the others, "Don't you want to kill him? Why don't you do it? The astral wings' words were extremely grating to Tungumo and the others. This kind of feeling made them feel that their 1,000 people were not worth mentioning. Instead, they had become the measuring stick between the star demon wings and Long Chen. Boom! The black light around Tungumo's body suddenly exploded. The scene before him and the events in the demonic abyss of the stellar ocean caused his anger to skyrocket. Kill Long Chen and the others first and capture Kong Henshui. If Kong Henshui tries to escape, capture him immediately. Tungumo roared angrily. The heavenly god of space Swallowing clan had left the demonic abyss of the stellar ocean more than 10 days before Long Chen and the others. It was obvious that they had set up many traps and were preparing to use them. The 1,000 or so heavenly god of space Swallowing clan members could no longer suppress the anger in their hearts. In an instant, nearly 300 of them were sent to watch the astral wings' every move. The other 700 or so were sent to suppress Long Chen and the others under Tungumo's lead. A huge battle was about to break out. Kong Henshui and the others were also prepared for a huge battle. However, they didn't have the slightest bit of confidence in their hearts. Right now, their opponents weren't just the heavenly god of space Swallowing clan members. There was also the mysterious astral wings. As they communicated with each other, most of their words were about protecting Kong Henshui and finding an opportunity to use her innate ability to survive. Under everyone's gazes, Long Chen suddenly took a few steps towards Tungumo and the others. The enmity between us isn't too deep. If you don't try to capture Kong Henshui, I can spare your lives. Spare your lives? The bodies of Tungumo and the others stiffened. They couldn't believe their ears. Some of them even turned to look at their clansmen. After confirming that there were still several hundred 5th Order and 6th Order God Emperors around them, they turned to look at Long Chen with a puzzled expression. The humanoid figure of the astral wings, who was separated by 300 people, narrowed his eyes and stared at Long Chen. He muttered, "Where did you get your confidence from? Let's see what kind of person we've met today." Before Tungumo could say anything, the 2 old men beside him glared at Long Chen with ashen faces and shouted, "Ignorant brat! If it was the astral wings, we might have to think twice. What gives you the right to do so? You're at most a 5th or 6th Order God Emperor. No matter how powerful you are, how dare you spout such arrogant words?" Buzz! The 2 old men had barely taken a few steps forward when a dark purple light flashed past their eyes. Their voices came to an abrupt halt. The originally noisy scene instantly quieted down. Tungumo, who was leading the group, felt the heat on his face. His body started to tremble violently as he frantically retreated. In an instant, Kong Henshui, Qin Xian, Jian Shisan, and everyone else from the heavenly god of space Swallowing clan turned to look at the 2 people who had just spoken. In the void, where the 2 of them had been fighting, there were only 2 corpses left. The 2 corpses had been sliced in half at the waist, and no soul had escaped from their bodies. 2 6th Order God Emperors from the heavenly god of space Swallowing clan had died at the same time. The expression of the astral wings froze. His brows started to furrow, and his gaze didn't linger on the heavenly god of space Swallowing clan. From the beginning, he had been staring at Long Chen. Chapter 1278. Long Chen's sudden attack shocked Tungumo. If it weren't for the 2 6th Order God Emperors, he would have been the one to die. The heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline, who were burning with rage, felt as if they had been doused with ice water. The death of 2 6th Order God Emperors was too shocking. Long Chen was only a 5th Order God Emperor, but the battle prowess he displayed now was enough to shock even a 7th Order God Emperor. This kind of talent was extremely rare even among the various Chaos Divine tribes. The difference between a 5th Order God Emperor and a 7th Order God Emperor was 2 whole levels, which was equivalent to a difference of 20 small realms. Tungumo hesitated for a moment. At this moment, he really wasn't sure if he could defeat Long Chen with the advantage of numbers. As for the astral wings, that was even more of a pipe dream. He was really unwilling to accept this. While everyone was still pondering, Long Chen said coldly, "You have one last chance. Take your people and leave now, or none of you will leave today." Long Chen's voice was filled with killing intent. When the 1,000 people heard this, they no longer looked down on Long Chen. They felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Their gazes fell on Tungumo. Tungumo's face was ashen. In the end, he actually retreated step by step while facing Long Chen. More than 1,000 Fifth Order and Sixth Order God Emperors were forced to retreat by Long Chen's halberd. The smile on Xing Mo's face gradually turned cold. He didn't stop the heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline from leaving. The heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline gradually retreated tens of thousands of miles, but they still looked at the battle from afar. They hoped that both sides would suffer and see if there was any hope left. At such a distance, they felt much more at ease. Xing Mo didn't seem to care whether the heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline left or not. His gaze was fixed on Long Chen. He slowly walked through the void toward Long Chen. Jianshi San, Zhu Zizhua, and the others were prepared to join forces with Long Chen to suppress Xing Mo. "You guys step back first." Long Chen waved his hand, indicating for them to leave this place. While everyone was still hesitating, Xing Mo sneered, "What are you waiting for? If we don't leave now, we might die in front of him." Rumble. As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of golden wings appeared on both sides of his back, whistling between heaven and earth. The terrifying treasure light instantly attacked Long Chen. Long Chen snorted coldly and thrust his halberd forward, instantly shattering the formless energy. Even so, Qin Xian, Zhu Zizhua, and the others all retreated as if they were swept away by a gust of wind. The two of them were now less than 10 meters apart. Everyone's heartstrings were pulled. They wanted to see the terrifying power of Duo Ming's star demon treasured wings. "You clearly could have made the same choice as the heavenly god devouring heavenly god. Why do you insist on fighting me?" Xing Mo asked Long Chen. He didn't think that Long Chen would suddenly give up on killing the heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline out of kindness. He definitely wanted to preserve his strength. Even if 1,000 heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline couldn't defeat him, they would definitely be able to weaken his strength. Long Chen had no intention of explaining. Instead, he replied, "I don't need you to recognize me as your master. However, you have to help me find something." "Find something?" The physical body formed by the astral wings gradually disappeared, leaving behind only a pair of wings that were as dazzling as the sun. As the wings floated up and down, several rays of divine light shot out from within. They were a saber light and a few thin silver needles. These seemingly simple attacks caused the heavenly god devouring heavenly god's bloodline to gasp involuntarily. They stared fixedly at the attacks produced by the astral wings. Even though these attacks were from a distance, they still caused them to tremble in fear. These weren't simple primal chaos divine power. Instead, they were formed by the essence energy of numerous rare treasures. They contained boundless killing intent. Buzz! Xing Mo's attacks instantly collided with Long Chen's halberd. Terrifying ripples spread across the sky. The void in the void realm was destroyed. It was as if it was about to be torn apart by the power of these two people. "Good halberd." Xing Mo's physical body hadn't appeared, but cries of surprise could still be heard from within the wings. At the same time, his attacks didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. The attacks on the wings were like a tide. Each attack seemed to contain the power of a rare treasure. Lightning, torrential rain, raging flames. The endless attacks actually contained countless divine abilities and spells. They shook the heavens and the earth. Under the halberd, the attacks formed by the essence energy of the divine weapons were instantly shattered. The halberd in Long Chen's hands was definitely far more powerful than these divine weapons. He wanted to see how long Long Chen could last. The first seal was broken. Boom boom boom. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Long Chen's halberd trembled. The first seal on the world-suppressing cauldron was broken. The two of them had only exchanged blows for an hour. The Heavenly God Clan's members had already retreated 1,000,000 miles away. In the end, they disappeared into the horizon. They had completely given up on any thoughts of escaping. The terrifying combat strength of the astral wings was one thing. The strength displayed by Longchen, a fifth-order God Emperor, made them lose all hope of escaping. This was especially true when they saw the halberd in his hands. When the second seal on the halberd was broken, everyone felt as if 100 suns were shining in the sky. The battle between the two of them wasn't something that 5th or 6th order God Emperors could interfere with. Only 7th or 8th order God Emperors could contend against them. Kong Henshui had already led everyone into a strange space. They could clearly see the battle between Longchen and Xing Mo. At this moment, both Longchen and Xing Mo were in a terrible state. Xing Mo's left wing had been pierced by the halberd, leaving a bloody hole. Golden liquid flowed out from the bloody hole, and a strange phenomenon occurred. Everything about the star demon treasured wings seemed to contain the power of creation. Longchen was also under great pressure because he had broken the second seal. If it weren't for the fact that he had already merged with 2 Chaos Dragon bones and his cultivation had already reached the 5th order God Emperor realm, he would have lost most of his combat strength by just opening the second seal on the halberd. Longchen stared at the golden blood flowing out of the astral wings and said coldly, "Do you really think you can defeat me?" If these words had come out of the mouth of any other 5th order God Emperor, Xing Mo would have slapped him to death in an instant. Now that these words came out of Longchen's mouth, he could only smile bitterly. He knew that Longchen still had many trump cards that he hadn't used yet. He knew these things better than anyone else. Searching for heavenly treasures was his innate ability. He didn't know what was in Longchen's body, but he could feel an uneasy aura. "You? What are you looking for?" The star demon finally admitted defeat. He was not willing to continue the battle. Otherwise, the best outcome would be that both sides would suffer great losses. The place where the Realm Lord's Chaos Dragon bones were scattered after his death. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.